19 hours, I guess, close to 24 hours straight. Started at 1 a.m., and as the ranking member said, it sounds like we may very well end at 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. with a vote in the dead of night on the floor on a 1,000-page bill that would have dramatic negative consequences for the American people. But I don't know that I could say it any better than one of your colleagues, Madam Chair, and that's Representative Massey, who posted on social media just a little while ago, I'll quote, "Major provisions of the big, beautiful bill are still being negotiated and written, yet we are being told we will all vote on it today. Shouldn't we take more than a few hours to read a bill this big and this consequential?" Now, what's interesting is a commentator responded to that tweet and said, "Wasn't that a promise, too, that y'all would get 48 hours to read new bills before voting?" And Mr. Massey's response, "Yes, it is in our rules that we will have 72 hours to read every bill, yet it's been circumvented this week by a manager's amendment, which substantially changes the bill, but should only contain technical clarifications. And a rule called same-day rule has also been suspended," which, of course, we know was done yesterday. Here's the point. We've seen this movie before. We, I suppose, will wait here with bated breath for the manager's amendment to be submitted to this committee. I suspect that that manager's amendment is not going to have technical corrections and changes to the rule print, but instead will be fundamental changes to this bill. And we, House Democrats, and ultimately the American public, will be compelled to reckon with and try to discern what those changes are and the impact the changes will have on our constituents in the dead of night. And so I would encourage the majority to reconsider, and I would hope we weren't able to convince the Speaker to hold this hearing at a regular hour, the way that all the other markups were. We failed in that effort. Perhaps we'd be more successful in persuading the Speaker to put the bill on the floor in the morning so that the American people can actually have a chance to listen to the debate that unfolds on the House floor. With that, I'll yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you. Ms. Leisure-Fernandez, you're recognized.
Thank you. And once again, I think we heard from this panel a range of ideas that only through showing up and testifying and actually speaking, we had very little Republican participation because, you know, as we noticed this morning, they don't even want to read out loud their own bill. They are so ashamed of what is in the bill that they refuse to read out loud their bill. But what you all have done is come to us with provisions so that we cannot have the kind of corruption from Qatar that we are seeing, so that we can protect states' rights and states' budgets and some kind of respect for the relationship they have and the obligation the federal government has. And oh my God, the silencer thing, thank you so very much for bringing that up today. And yes, there are ways of addressing the deficit and actually protecting the middle class that we could get to, but they don't really want to get to because, as you have pointed out, it's all about the wealthy. Everything they do is about the wealthy. There's all kinds of other stuff. And do they have their heads on the sand or what? Like, not in the sand, they were like ignoring the danger around us for money, right? So the risks that they are imposing on the American people is just astounding. And, you know, we came in at night. I don't know if there was a moon or there wasn't a moon, and then there was a sun or maybe not a sun, and now there's maybe not a moon or not a moon. But what it is definitely, even the Republicans are in the dark because, as we can see from these tweets, they haven't seen any final language. They think this is in there. They think that's not in there. And I heard that maybe they all want to go to some meeting and they all have to leave to go do something better than stand up for their constituents. So that's why we're watching this, because they all have Memorial Day plans. Really, it's disgusting what they're doing. With that, I yield back.
Thank you, Ms. Leisure-Fernandez. I thank the panel for being here. We have, I believe, one more panel, and so I'll tell you you're excused. If I could ask you all to do the same thing the last panel did, we have 7, I believe, not counting Mr. McGovern, or he's going to stay here. So if you'll go down, Mr. Bynum, Miss Bynum, excuse me, Mr. Johnson, Ms. Poe, Mr. Landsman, Mr. Byer, Mr. Bishop. Somewhere in that order. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. We were just, before, people would bunch up here, and folks couldn't get down that way. And so we were just trying to get people balanced down just a little bit. Okay.
Madam Chair and Mr. Ranking Member and members of the committee, I want to start off by saying just how laughable it is to be calling this bill beautiful. And I'd like to replace that word with trash. It's a trash bill, and here's why. It's a bill that threatens $300 billion in cuts to food assistance. It's a bill that puts health care further and further out of reach for nearly 14 million people. It's a bill that will make it so that families have to choose between putting food on the table or filling a prescription. It's a bill that does nothing to lower costs or address the housing crisis. Madam Chair, I came here today to try and make this trash bill just a little bit better, to try and protect my constituents from its harmful cuts. But I have little faith that the authors of this trash care enough about the American people to do it, especially since this committee tried to do it in the middle of the night. And as my Democratic colleagues have shown us today, sunlight is the best disinfectant. You see, this isn't the first time I've tried to make this bill better, and it wouldn't be the first time that my Republican colleagues chose to put billionaires over their constituents in mine. I first introduced these amendments in the House Financial Services Committee, and they were voted down by my Republican colleagues. My amendments are aimed at protecting Americans and making life more affordable. And you would think members on the Financial Services Committee would be down for that. You would think all members would be down for that, Madam Chair. So now I ask my Republican colleagues on this committee, are you? Are you willing to protect our students and our families? Are you willing to make health care more affordable and more accessible? Are you willing to lower costs for your constituents? And if so, I look forward to you supporting my amendments. Instead of cutting food assistance for students and families, I'm trying to make sure that when they take out loans, they will be protected from predatory lending and unfair practices. Instead of ripping away access to health care, I'm trying to lower health care costs by capping out-of-pocket costs. Instead of taking seniors and taking food off of their tables, I'm supporting an effort from my colleague, Congressman Jonathan Jackson, to strike the section of the bill that would expand work requirements for seniors on SNAP. And instead of increasing costs on those struggling the most in an effort to make the rich richer, I'm fighting to lower costs for my constituents and all Americans. Madam Chair, I brought the data. Let me tell you what the numbers look like. In your district, 201,000 people will lose health care because of this bill. That's 27% of your constituents. In Rep. Fishbach's district, it's over 165. Rep. Norman, 148,000 people will lose health care in his district. Rep. Roy, 56,000 people use SNAP to feed their families. And in Rep. Houchin, it's 54,000. Over 83,000 kids get health care through Medicaid in Rep. Langworthy's district. In Rep. Scott, it's 124,000 kids. In Rep. Jacks, it's 88,000 kids. And in Rep. Griffiths, it's nearly 107,000. I know where my priorities are. It's with my constituents. And I'll be voting against this trash bill because I stand with America's children and America's families. Madam Chair, I respectfully urge you to do the same and get your colleagues focused on serving the American people. I yield back.
Thank you, Ms.
Madam Chair, Ranking Member, I know that meteorologically speaking, we are in springtime, but legislatively speaking, a dark, ice-cold winter has descended upon America. The biting, cold winds of MAGA are frozen hearts that shut off warmth and sustenance for the needy, the working poor, and the poor, while they consort with the billionaires and millionaires who frolic in their warm mansions and on their luxury yachts in warm seas, never satisfied with the luxuries they enjoy for ease and comfort. The cold winds howl as MAGA rams through the House what Trump has commanded to be named the Big Beautiful Bill. It's the big, ugly GOP tax scam, which rips away health care from 14 million Americans, takes food away from 3 million people every month, and drives up the cost of everyday essentials with its tariffs, which is a tax paid by those same folks who are losing their health care and food stamps, all to hand massive tax breaks to billionaires like Elon Musk. With this bill, billionaires win and working families lose. And as House MAGA Republicans move to snatch food and health care from those in need just to pay for tax cuts for the wealthy, billionaire Donald Trump today accepted an obscenely expensive emolument, a $400 million luxury jet paid for by corrupt Middle Eastern sheiks. Madam Chairman, my first amendment would strike Section 70302 and restore federal courts' ability, when necessary, to hold government officials in contempt in cases where they violate a person's constitutional rights. We all know the reason Republicans added this section. Federal judges have issued over 150 court orders that block or pause the Trump administration's lawless and unconstitutional actions. Trump keeps losing in court, so Republicans want to rig the system so that Trump can ignore judges' orders against him. Without my amendment, this bill prohibits a court from enforcing the orders that it issues, turning courts into paper tigers. This bill says that unless you hand over a lot of money when Donald Trump and his administration violate your rights, they can just keep on violating them. It's one more way Republicans and the Trump administration want to trample on the rights of ordinary people who are not wealthy and do so with impunity. This country is built on the rule of law. The judicial branch is essential to ensuring that the violation of one's constitutional rights can be vindicated by the courts. That is why we need my amendment, so that any time Trump or a future president violates the law, Americans can go to court and stop it before any more harm is done. Because this country is about we the people, not about Donald Trump the king. And I also offer a second amendment which would allow funds to be used to provide lawyers for unaccompanied immigrant children. Picture this, a 2-year-old sucking her thumb while clutching a teddy bear, standing in front of the immigration judge, sitting high and looking down from the bench, while a seasoned lawyer working for the government argues that the unaccompanied child should be sent back to El Salvador, where the dictator holds her parents in a hellhole prison for being politically incorrect. This amendment just makes sense. It would allow legal representation for unaccompanied children. We do not allow children to represent themselves in any other legal proceedings. An immigration court should be no different. On cases and advocate for themselves during adversarial hearings. Do we expect that toddler sucking her thumb and clutching her worn and tattered teddy bear to represent herself? Really? There have been long-standing bipartisan support efforts to provide counsel to unaccompanied children, because Congress has realized for years that legal representation is essential to ensure that children have meaningful access to asylum and other protections. And with that, Madam Chair and Mr. Ranking Member, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Ms. Poe, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Ranking Member McGovern. I want to thank all my colleagues who have spoken over the past 19 hours, providing amendments to improve this big, bad, ugly bill. I come before you today to discuss my deep concerns with the legislation the committee is considering today and the amendments I have offered try to improve it. This bill is heavily skewed to give huge tax breaks to the wealthiest 1/10 of the 1% of Americans. Any tax cuts that Congress provide should favor the middle class and all other hardworking Americans, and this bill does not do that at all. This bill will cause New Jersey families to go hungry. Around 83,000 people in my district, the 9th district, including children, working parents, seniors, and veterans, buy food with SNAP. The SNAP cuts here will mean thousands of our neighbors won't be able to feed their families. The price tag in this bill is enormous, costing taxpayers $4 trillion. But instead of lowering costs and supporting families, it will make their day-to-day lives harder. This legislation includes massive cuts to Medicaid, which covers more than 1.7 million New Jerseyans, including over 1/3 of all children in the state. This bill could lead to 1 in 5 New Jerseyans on Medicaid losing their coverage. This means losing checkups, treatments for chronic diseases like diabetes, access to life-saving medication. Cuts to Medicaid will hit particularly hard mothers and families in our poorest communities. That is why I've offered an amendment to require states to provide 12 months of continuous health care coverage for pregnant and postpartum women who qualify for Medicaid and CHIP. My state, New Jersey, already provides this coverage. 2 out of 3 maternal deaths in America happens in the days following childbirth. Health care at this time means the difference between life and death. My amendment number 84 builds on the work of my colleagues, including Representative Robin Kelly and the Black Maternal Health Caucus. I am grateful for their leadership. This is a common sense provision. If you support women and working families, there is no reason to oppose this. I have offered 5 additional amendments to this legislation that will make air traffic safer and more reliable by preventing mass layoffs at FAA and NTSB, reduce flooding by increasing funding for clean water grants, ensure transportation improvements continue progressing by preventing funding cuts, improve public safety by making sure that FEMA grants continue without delays and unnecessary red tape. And finally, provide funding for transit and other infrastructure improvements to prepare for the World Cup in my district next year. Madam Chairwoman, I encourage the entire committee to rule these amendments in order. Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you very much, Mr. Landsman. You're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Ranking Member, all of you. This is a terrible bill. It's so terrible that I have amendments that will attempt to protect children's hospitals, rural hospitals, and Americans with cancer. That's how bad the bill is, that all 3 need protection. The bill, as you all know, would gut Medicaid by anywhere between $700 to $900 billion. That's 9 million Americans who will lose their health insurance. On top of that, another $360 billion in affordable care subsidies. That's another 5 million Americans who will lose their health care. Anywhere between $230 to $300 billion in food assistance. Millions and millions of Americans, mostly children, will lose food. And it adds trillions to our deficit, all to pay for tax cuts that overwhelmingly support the wealthiest people in this country and big corporations. When you rip health care away from millions of Americans, it means that some people will die. Kill the bill, not Americans. My First Amendment prohibits Medicaid provider taxes from being capped in any state where those caps would harm a children's hospital. I have in my district the second best children's hospital in the country. I don't want it to be negatively affected at all. 50% of its revenue comes from Medicaid. If this bill passes, it will demonstrably harm our children's hospital and the children and families they serve. The Second Amendment prohibits Medicaid provider taxes from being capped in states where rural hospitals will be negatively affected. I have in my district hospitals that serve rural communities. They will be decimated. And my Third Amendment inserts that in no case may a deduction, cost sharing, or similar charge be imposed under the state plan with respect to cancer care services. As you know, there is a new fee for low-income families. When they get treatment, they have to pay more money. This says if it's cancer treatment, they shouldn't have to pay. The fact that these amendments are being put forward suggests that this is a terrible bill. And there's a better way. We all want and will support tax relief for working people, middle-class families, farmers, small businesses. All that can be paid for by simply adjusting just a little bit the tax code for the wealthiest in this country and big corporations. A minimum billionaire tax alone, call it the Elon tax, would generate over $500 billion. Adjusting the corporate tax rate just a little bit, $1.3 trillion. You can do all of the tax relief for everyone that needs it without touching anyone's health care, messing with food, or touching the deficit. And we get a bipartisan agreement on waste, fraud, and abuse, the border, and this thing gets 350 votes. On the other hand, if you all move forward with this bill, as Senator Hawley said, it will be devastating to people, it will hurt people, some will die, and it is political suicide. Kill the bill. That I yield back.
Landsman, Mr. Byer, you're recognized.
Madam Chair and Ranking Member McGovern, all the committee members, first of all, thank you for being here 19 hours and 20 minutes already. It's incredibly generous of you to do that. Madam Chair, I'm testifying on 4 energy amendments, which really are classically Republican amendments that I think any of my friends, Republican colleagues on Ways and Means could be introducing, because this bill is not just catastrophic for the future livability planet, but it's catastrophic for energy dominance, for economic growth, and for the stated Republican energy agenda. This bill is much worse on energy than I thought it was going to be because it doesn't recognize the energy realities on the ground, because it's not a serious bill. My First Amendment is to protect the consumer energy tax credits. These are the tax credits for 3 million American families took advantage of in 2023. And every homeowner knows the cost to replace an HVAC or the water heater or the windows. And these are the very credits that make these home improvements affordable. Well, many Americans are struggling with the cost of living. I think one of the big reasons why Donald Trump won in November. This bill actually steals away the very credits that make the things more affordable, all for tax cuts for billionaires who won't even notice the change to their balance sheets. My Second Amendment restores the energy investment tax credit and the production tax credits, the ITC and the PTC. it's confusing to me because these have been long-held tax credits that were passed in a bipartisan way. Republicans have always supported them. They weren't part of the IRA. They existed long before the IRA, and it doesn't make any sense they're being attacked. And the average American residential consumer is going to see their electricity bill by way more than $100 next year. And then the business community is a lot higher increases, all the small businesses. Not only did these tax credits help keep the energy prices low, but they also increased the capacity of the energy grid. So they estimate that between now and 2035, our energy capacity will shrink the potential by as much as 72%. I co-chair the bipartisan AI caucus with Mike McCall, Jay Obernolte, and eliminating the ITC and the PTC is going to be the biggest threat to AI growth. We all know in all the AI meetings we have right now that the big thing that holds it back right now is the energy needed to drive all those data centers. But it's just basic math. The energy capacity is not going to be there unless we have the ITC and the PTC. All the other things, the renewables, they're bringing LNG online, that's not going to do it in time. My third amendment prevents the nuclear, hydrogen, and domestic manufacturing tax credits from being eliminated. These are Republican priorities. I knew the Ways and Means markup was unserious when I saw these provisions in the bill. Why are Republicans trying to kill nuclear fission? I thought we were trying to bring SMRs back. Why are they trying to kill the very promising fusion industry? Again, we have a huge bipartisan fusion caucus led by Chuck Fleischman and Jay Obernolte, and this will kill that. And then hydrogen. Hydrogen is a critical part of the oil and gas industry. And then finally, why do Republicans want to kill domestic manufacturing? I know this is what President Trump says he wants, to bring the manufacturing jobs back. But between tariffs and this reconciliation bill, 50,000 energy jobs have already been lost, or delayed, or canceled, and $56 billion of energy investments have been stalled or canceled. At the end of 2024, we had annual investment in American factories hit nearly $150 billion. But when we try to kill these energy jobs and this manufacturing, why do we do this when the president says it's his priority? And by the way, most of these are in Republican congressional districts. They're helping the people who voted for Donald Trump. It doesn't make any sense. Instead, these actions are going to kill hundreds of thousands of good-paying jobs. They're going to send U.S. manufacturing overseas by eliminating the landscape that made domestic investment attractive. And not to mention the 45X tax credit, which is the bill that kills, that has been so supportive of the mining industry. And again, I can't understand why Republican friends are attacking the mining industry. Finally, my last amendment is to protect traditional Republican priorities that my friends on Ways and Means couldn't do behind the scenes, but I know that they were offering it. The first was to restore the transferability provisions. That was a Republican-led priority. The second is changing placed in service to the beginning of construction. Again, very business-friendly. Republicans tried to do it. And the third was to use an existing Republican proposal to amend the FEOC to make it more workable. All told, this bill is a disaster for energy dominance, which I understand the president said is his priority. The GOP is ripping away these energy credits from American families and stifling economic growth while blowing a $5 trillion hole in the budget, all to give a tax cuts for billionaires. It hurts most American families, especially those who voted for Donald Trump. And I encourage the Rules Committee to make these 4 amendments in order, and I yield back.
Sorry, Mr. Bishop, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairwoman Fox, Ranking Member McGovern, members of the committee. This is not a big, beautiful bill. It's a big, fat, ugly bill. It has wrinkles, warts, festering sores, and scars. And while Republicans are trying to put makeup and lipstick on this ugly creature to enhance its appearance, it's still ugly. And I'm here this evening to try and remove just a couple of warts with 2 amendments. The first is an amendment that addresses food insecurity experienced by military families by removing the barriers they face in applying for SNAP benefits. According to the most recent estimates by the Department of Defense, 28%, or nearly 1 in 3 of U.S. military families face food insecurity. Junior enlisted and military families of color struggle to put food on the table. This phenomenon even affects double military families, young couples just starting out where both spouses are enlisted. Experts believe that many families suffer in silence due to the stigma surrounding hunger and receiving nutrition benefits. Meanwhile, food pantries and food banks operate on or near every single military base in the United States. Military spouse unemployment is 7 times the national average as well. Frequent moves associated with the military lifestyle and the lack of affordable child care also strain household finances for low-ranking, low-pay military families. My amendment would address food insecurity among active duty service members by excluding the basic allowance for housing from SNAP income eligibility. These men and women of the armed forces cannot use the basic allowance for housing to feed themselves or their families. It can only be used for housing. Makes no sense that we're including the BAH as proof that junior service members make too much. They were making minimum wage before this latest NDAA raised their pay. Even with the recent pay increase, our troops are using that increase for the exorbitant cost of child care, not for food. It's a tragedy that many of our nation's military can't afford to put food on the table and face serious barriers to assistance. Those who fight for our freedom should not have to fight for food. My second amendment will right a wrong that the Republican leadership in the House of Representatives has been dragging its feet to correct. This amendment would simply insert the language of Senate Bill 1077, which would allow the District of Columbia to keep its budget intact rather than impounding local revenue that was collected by the city to fund its police officers, firefighters, teachers, medical services, and all the essential services the city provides for its residents and visitors. As you all know, the measure passed the Senate unanimously by voice vote, but House Republicans have refused to consider it, despite President Trump strongly supporting the measure. I'm not suggesting that my colleagues should support it simply because President Trump does, but I say this to point out the overwhelming support this provision enjoys. It's time to stop playing politics with the citizens of our nation's capital. This is the seat of our federal government, housing our 3 co-equal branches, the Congress, the executive branch, and the judiciary, and it should be given the equal dignity and respect that any other political jurisdiction in our country enjoys. It is their local tax dollars, and they should be allowed to use them as Congress has authorized in the D.C. Home Rule Act. Remove this wart, remove these 2 warts, and pass a bill that takes care of the American people. I urge the adoption of these 2 amendments to remove these 2 warts on an ugly, ugly bill. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Bishop. Mr. McGovern, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So over 100 members have testified today on this bill, and I'll be 101. We have testified. We've come to the Rules Committee to testify, not to hear our voices, but because we all profoundly disagree with this bill. And Madam Chair, my amendment would restore NIH grant funding that has been already appropriated, including funding that has already been awarded. This is not some hypothetical issue. This is real. Over 1,000 NIH scientists have been fired. Billions and billions of dollars worth of research has been canceled. This is NIH research into cancer, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, all cut off. Canceled by this administration, canceled by DOGE. And there are active medical research projects, including clinical trials, that cannot stop without people dying. And that is what we're talking about here. There are people out there who have no treatment options if NIH funding abruptly stops. Nothing. This is life or death for those people. Literally life or death. I mean, what are they supposed to do? Trump's cuts to NIH mean cures and breakthroughs are already slipping further and further out of our reach. These scientists can't just stop research and pick it back up in a few years like nothing happened. This sets us back decades and decades. I've talked to researchers in my district who have already said that they're considering leaving the country because of how unpredictable funding might be going forward. And if they can't even be sure that the grant that they've been awarded will be fulfilled, then why would they try to keep pursuing those research opportunities in the United States. I've been around Congress a long time, and I can tell you that no matter who is in the majority, who the president is, supporting medical research has always been a bipartisan effort, because diseases like cancer don't care about political affiliation. NIH is not just some line item. I mean, there are real people behind the work that they do, and there are people whose lives are prolonged and saved because of the work that they do. This is personal to me. 5 years ago, my daughter Molly was diagnosed with a rare cancer, and there was no surefire treatment, but she was accepted into an NIH clinical trial, and she received excellent care. As all of you know, a few weeks ago, she passed away due to complications from her cancer at the age of 23. And we are so devastated by her loss. But we are so grateful that we got to spend more time with her because of the NIH clinical trial that she was in. A clinical trial made possible because for decades, Congress has provided funding to the NIH in a bipartisan way. And how can anyone justify firing NIH doctors and scientists? How can they look our family and other families in the eye and justify these cynical, cruel NIH cuts? I mean, this is about our priorities as a nation. And this Congress is cutting taxes for billionaires. This Republican Congress is cutting taxes for billionaires. At the same time, this president is gutting NIH, and this Congress, this Republican Congress, is cutting health care. And I just find that totally wrong. So approving this amendment won't fix this disaster of a bill, but it will at the very least address Trump's cuts to life-saving medical research that I find unconscionable and immoral. And for the countless other people out there, the moms and dads and kids who rely on clinical trials for the hope of just one more month, just one more day, this amendment one day could save their life. And I would urge my colleagues to support this amendment. I yield back my time.
Thank you, Mr. McGovern. Anybody over here have anything? No? Ms. Scanlon?
I just want to once again thank all of our colleagues for coming in, for bearing with us, for helping us approach the 24-hour mark, and thank you for your testimony. And Mr. Johnson, I think I'm a co-sponsor with you on your amendment. Sorry. I think I'm a co-sponsor with you on your amendment with respect to the Judiciary Committee amendments that you offered. So thank you for bringing them forward again. I yield back.
Ms. Leisure-Fernandez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, everybody, for presenting your amendments. Thank you, Ranking Member. You know, it's really hard to have the courage to ask your colleagues to do not only what is right, but things that arise that are so personal and raise the vulnerabilities that we all know. And today, we felt the need for this amendment, and we've all felt it in our lives. And the Republicans have felt it in theirs. And they know this is right to support something like this. Thank you, Ranking Member. And I yield back.
Thank you, Ms. Leisure-Fernandez. Well, I'm going to make a couple of comments. First, Mr. McGovern, one of my first jobs was working in Chapel Hill in the pathology department, where I learned where the clotting factor for hemophilia was found. And much of the money for that research came from the NIH, along with foundations. And so I'm very, very supportive of funding for the NIH and the work that it does. And I know that it does life-saving things. And I'm very glad that the work there extended Molly's time with you. I think that's very important. However, I am concerned about what has been said about this bill and what it's going to do, the extreme comments that have been made about it, and how I believe that it is scaring people out there in the country unnecessarily. The words I've heard, particularly today, are cut, rip, gut, kill, cruel, stealing food, losing coverage, jammed through, biggest transfer of wealth from vulnerable to wealthy people, irresponsible. That's not the way we ought to be talking about this bill. And I want to remind you of some words that were used in 2017 by our colleagues, and I think it's important. Words used about the Tax Cut and Jobs Act. Then House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi infamously predicted Armageddon for America. Former Clinton Treasury Secretary Larry Summers described pro-growth forecasts as tooth fairies and predicted a long recession. He was joined by discredited New York Times columnist Paul Krugman, who guaranteed a global recession with no end in sight. They were wrong. Instead, we got one of the greatest economic expansions in history. In the 2 years immediately after the passage of the TCJA, wages increased 4.9%, the fastest two-year growth in real wages in 20 years. The Washington Post gave Speaker Pelosi 2 Pinocchios for falsely claiming that 86 million middle-class families will see a tax increase. I can go on and on about the comments that were made then that did not come true. I really wish we could have been a little more temperate about this, because even people in my district that I know very well were scared very much about this bill. And I don't think the bill is going to do the dire things that we have heard. So I think there's been a concentrated effort to mislead people about what's happening here. And I'm going to ask my colleagues to work with us. I believe this bill will pass in fashion close to what it is now, but we'll continue to work on it, and we'll continue to work together throughout this entire session to make sure that if there are things that have gone wrong in here, that we make sure we don't have the cataclysms and the Armageddon that has been described here, which really, really trouble me, because they help divide our country more and more. And we don't need that. We don't need to divide ourselves, and we don't need to divide the country any more than it already is. So with that, I yield back my time. Seeing none, this closes the hearing portion of our meeting. And our panel is relieved. The chair, the committee stands in recess until 8:50 p.m. My colleagues have now seen the manager's amendment that will be self-executing in this rule. You've all received a copy of the amendment. The amendment makes a number of technical and conforming changes to clarify references and cure bird fatalities. Additionally, the amendment makes a few substantive changes, including adjusting the implementation date for Medicaid work requirements, providing additional funding to states for border security actions they've taken, striking the Oversight Committee requirements that federal pensions take an average of an employee's highest 5 earning years, striking the sale of public lands in Nevada and Utah, caps the SALT deduction at $40,000 per household for incomes up to $500,000. The chair will be in receipt of a motion from the gentlewoman from Indiana, Ms. Houchin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I move the committee grant H.R. 1, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, a closed rule. The rule waives all points of order against consideration of the bill. The rule provides that an amendment in the nature of a substitute consisting of the text of Rules Committee Print 119-3, modified by the amendment printed in the Rules Committee report, shall be considered as adopted, and the bill as amended shall be considered as read. The rule waives all points of order against provisions in the bill as amended. The rule provides 2 hours of general debate, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on the Budget or their respective designees, and the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Ways and Means or their respective designees. The rule provides 1 motion to recommit. Finally, the rule provides that Clause 5B of Rule 21 shall not apply to the bill or amendments thereto.
Thank you very much, Ms. Houchin. You've now heard the motion. Is there any discussion or amendment to the rule?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Mr. McGovern.
Yeah, so, again, we spent 20 hours debating this bill, and many of the 500 amendments submitted to it as well. We began at 1 a.m. We have been fully transparent about our views. Over 100 Democrats testified before this committee, expressing our profound opposition to this bill and our deep disappointment in the process. On the other hand, Republicans went off and debated with themselves in some secret back room. Now we're back here in the dead of night, and they want the only amendment to move forward. They want the only amendment to move forward to be the one that they wrote in secret. It's a 40-page manager's amendment. I have no idea what the implications are of the changes that are being made. We're not going to get a CBO score on the changes before we vote. And again, the manager's amendment isn't some boring compilation of technical fixes. It makes huge changes to key portions of the bill. And how in the world are members supposed to understand what they're about to vote on? I mean, are you going to explain every provision of this? Our old colleague, Mr. Massey, understands it. I mean, Mr. Neguse quoted him earlier. He said, shouldn't we take more than a few hours to read a bill this big and this consequential, end quote. You know, Congressman Massey's right. We have had only minutes to review this amendment before voting on it, without even a comparative print. We don't even have a comparative print to show what is changing. I mean, CBO spent days and days carefully putting together data about what the previous version of this bill would do. I know it didn't show what you were hoping it would show, but it seems vital for us to get updated data on a bill that is set to rob the middle class in order to pay off the rich. So there is no pressing deadline here. That's what is so puzzling to us. I mean, just your own made-up deadline to pass this bill before Memorial Day. We could do this bill tomorrow or the next day. We could do it when we come back from Memorial Day. So, you know, we should recess and give everyone the time needed to understand these changes. This is a big deal. This is consequential. And that we're moving forward with major changes, and we're just supposed to take, you know, your word for it that, oh, it's no big deal. So, you know what, I move that we adjourn, because we ought to take the time to be able to do this.
Point of order. Motion to adjourn has been made. It's not debatable. No comments after that can be allowed. Madam Chair.
Say that again.
The gentleman made a motion to adjourn and then wanted to explain it, but you can't debate a motion to adjourn. So once the motion's made, all discussion ends.
Understand. Yes.
All right, stop
The
debating every which
clerk,
way you can, I get it, okay.
yeah. The question
Well, that's
is
the
on-
rule going back to Parliament.
I get it, yeah, I get it.
The question is on the motion to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no.
No.
In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it.
Can I ask for a roll call, or am I going to be silenced on that?
You may ask for a roll
I ask for a
call.
roll call. This
The clerk
atrocious
will-
process.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Fishbach? No. Ms. Fishbach, no. Mr. Norman? Mr. Roy? Mrs. Houchin? Ms. Houchin, no. Mr. Langworthy? No. Mr. Langworthy, no. Mr. Scott? No. Mr. Scott, no. Mr. Griffith? No. Mr. Griffith, no. Mr. Jack?
No.
Mr. Jack, no. Mr. McGovern?
Aye.
Mr. McGovern, aye. Ms. Scanlon? Aye. Ms. Scanlon, aye. Mr. Neguse? Aye. Mr. Neguse, aye. Ms. Ledger Fernandez? Ms. Ledger Fernandez, aye. Madam Chair?
No.
Madam Chair, no.
Clerk will report the tally.
4 yeas, 7 nays.
The amendment is not, the motion is not agreed to. Is there further
Yes.
discussion or amendment?
Madam Chairwoman, I have an amendment to the rule. I move the committee make an order amendment number 378 offered by myself, which requires NIH to restore all awarded, unspent, but obligated appropriated NIH grant funding.
You've heard the motion from the ranking member. Is there further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. No. In the opinion of the chair, the noes
I ask
have
for a
it.
roll call.
The gentleman asked for roll call. The clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Fishbach? No. Ms. Fishbach, no. Mr. Norman? Mr. Roy? Mrs. Houchin? No. Ms. Houchin, no. Mr. Langworthy? No. Mr. Langworthy, no. Mr. Scott? No. Mr. Scott, no. Mr. Griffith? Mr. Griffith, no. Mr. Jack?
No.
Mr. Jack, no. Mr. McGovern?
Aye.
Mr. McGovern, aye. Ms. Scanlon? Aye. Ms. Scanlon, aye. Mr. Neguse? Aye. Mr. Neguse, aye. Ms. Ledger Fernandez? Ms. Ledger Fernandez, aye. Madam Chair?
No.
Madam Chair, no.
Clerk will report the tally.
4 yeas, 7 nays.
The noes have it. The amendment is not agreed to. Is there further discussion
Yes.
on the,
Yeah. I have an amendment to the rule, Madam Chair.
Mr. Governor, you're
I move the
recognized.
committee strike the final sentence of the rule, which states that Clause 5B of Rule 21, the House rule requiring a supermajority vote to increase income taxes, does not apply to this bill. I mean, we have just spent hours and hours showing that this tax scam will mostly benefit the ultra-wealthy, while it will hurt the lowest earners. We have presented unbiased, nonpartisan analysis from the Joint Committee on Taxation, from the Congressional Budget Office, and from outside experts. And here's one final piece of proof. Republicans have to rig the rules to move their bill forward, even though it increases taxes for many families. And I'll try to explain in plain English. The House rules require a supermajority vote, 3/5, for any bill that increases income taxes. And guess what? Republicans are turning that rule off for this bill. You are turning it off. Not as part of a standard waiver of all points of order, but specifically and intentionally. And why do they have to do that? Because they know that this bill will increase taxes on those families who are struggling the most to put food on the table. And they want to rig the rules so they can pass it with a party line vote anyway, despite the House rule against it. This bill is a Republican scam, and the American people aren't going to fall for it. So I urge a yes vote on my amendment to ensure that we follow the House rules, and I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. Any further discussion? Mr. Neguse?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to be heard on the amendment. I support the gentleman's amendment, and I think it begs a larger question with reference to the manager's amendment that we're considering. We've had a very fulsome discussion over the course of the last 20 hours on the bill that was before this committee. we now have, I believe, a 40-some-odd page manager's amendment that's been submitted. Here it is. We just got it. And I know my colleagues seemed very willing to explain the various provisions of the underlying bill. And so I wonder if any of them would be willing to help explain to me the changes in the manager's amendment. If Mr. Scott or Mr. Norman could perhaps give us some clarity about what this manager's amendment attempts to do to the underlying bill. I mean, we just got it, so we're being asked to vote on it. I assume you all, and maybe who we need to have come in to explain it is Mr. Roy. I mean, Mr. Roy has not been in this hearing, I think, for the vast majority of it, the last 20 hours that we've been sitting here. I assume he's negotiating this. So I assume he explained to you what he's now asking you all to vote for. Can someone explain to us what this manager's amendment attempts to do?
Mr. Neguse?
Yes.
I gave you the summary. There's been a lot of discussion about it being a 1,000-page bill, but we all know all of those components were out there for a long time. And so I want to look at a 40-page bill. We all know that that's not 40 pages, 8.5, not a large amount. So much of it is technical. Mr. McGovern said there's not a lot that's technical. I've given you what are the major substantive changes in the bill. We're happy to give you a copy of that. But
is that a summary document that you have that yeah, if you could provide that to us, that would be helpful. Sure. I guess I'm just trying to get a sense of, and maybe my colleagues on the other side of the aisle already know, where did this bill end up on SALT? Where did it end up with the IRA phase-outs? Where all of the variety of issues that have been, been debated the last couple of days? I just think it's unfortunate that members would have to, find out from online on Twitter.
I can read this to you.
I'm just trying to understand, well, what does it mean to strike MAGA and insert Trump? I mean, what's that about in the manager's amendment?
I can answer that question, Madam Chair.
Yeah, I mean, this is why you don't, hand something like this to people and then rush into a markup. But anyways, if people could explain some of this stuff, that would be helpful.
Who was it that said they could explain the?
Mr. Griffith.
Sure.
If the chairwoman wants me to.
I'm happy to yield a moment from my time.
I'm happy to recognize you, Mr. Griffith.
Yeah, so.
It was my time, but I don't.
All of that language was in the original bill, and they were creating this new trust that you would, for a child born in, I think, 4 or 5 year period. I don't remember now if it was a 4-year period or a 5-year period. You could set up a trust. There was all kinds of rules about the qualifications of the trustee. It had to be a bank, et cetera, and the name of the trust originally was going to be the MAGA trust that you set up for the child, and the government was going to put in, I believe, if I remember correctly, it was $1,000 for each child where the family set this up, and they were going to call them MAGA trusts.
And why the name change?
The wisdom was to change that to the Trump trusts.
Oh, hell no. You're going to name these accounts?
Why?
So the Cory Booker idea, this was Cory Booker's idea. It's his baby bonds. Now, he was willing to call it baby, but Trump didn't call it
Can we
Trump.
do this one person at a time, please?
No, you're right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Griffith, for that explanation. It's nice to have that clarity, and I suspect those who might be watching online can now understand.
Wow.
So to put a finer point on it, the MAGA baby bonds are now going to be named the Trump baby bonds. That's what Republicans have spent the better part of the last 24 hours negotiating at the White House. Apparently, the president got his way, and these new savings accounts will be named in his honor. It's for all the talk of my colleagues, not treating him like a king. It sure seems like you are attempting to do so. I've never heard of you all would be screaming bloody murder if we named savings accounts after Barack Obama, the new trust accounts for your children and your grandchildren, Obama accounts.
Well, I
would love to see the reaction. But anyway, I will. I'm happy to yield back the balance of my time, and others want to be heard on the amendment. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, Ms. Scanlon.
Yeah, just with respect to that, instead of the MAGA trust or the Trump trust, why don't we call it the Trump diaper savings? It could be TDS, because I think the only way you end up with a stupid name like this is if you have TDS. So let's call it the Trump diaper savings.
Well, you'd need to offer an amendment to do that,
Oh,
I
I don't think
believe,
it's worth any
Ms. Scanlon.
It's not going anywhere.
Do we have a pending
Do-
amendment?
I-
So,
No, I believe you,
We're on his amendment.
right, and I'd like to speak to his amendment.
yes.
So, I mean, I think the reason we're talking about the amendment is that Republicans are going to raise taxes, right? Mr. McGovern?
Mr.
Right.
McGovern made an amendment
Yeah.
to take out the last line.
Right, and the
the
reason
vote.
that needs to be taken out is because the requirement, if I am
Right.
correct, I am going to read this. They are taking out consideration of retroactive tax rate increase. It shall not be in order to consider a bill, joint resolution, et cetera, carrying a retroactive federal income tax rate increase. The only reason you need to get rid of that section is because you're having a tax rate buried somewhere in here. So there is a tax rate increase. That's what you are doing. So not only are you, I mean, you need to think about that. And the problem is you don't know what's in this, but this is snuck in here. And your Republican colleagues should know that. Representative McGovern, I mean,
So they're making it easier to raise taxes on struggling families.
exactly.
Yeah, I mean, that's what this is. So that's what we're voting on. Otherwise, why would you waive it? Why would you have to waive it?
Yeah.
I believe the explanation is that it's very precautionary because of the name of the trust.
Oh, it's precautionary.
Because of the name of the trust.
The trust is a tax increase? So
We're talking-
clearly,
we're talking
there's
about
some
two
kind of
different
tax increase in this
No,
bill.
we're talking about two different things right
No,
now.
no, no.
You're talking about the MAGA Trump thing. I'm going back to that, we have a pending amendment.
No, that's what we're talking about. Why do we have that line in there?
While you have to approve a tax increase, you're approving a tax increase because you're increasing somebody's taxes for the Trump baby bonds? I mean, this is getting even more confusing. It is, your explanations
It
get us all
has-
more
Madam
worried.
Chairman,
Excuse me. There is a better explanation, and that is because we are continuing the tax cuts that were in the TCJA, it is being done as a cautionary measure to make sure that there is nothing seen in here that
But, Madam
would
Chair-
implicate a tax increase.
Yeah, but Madam Chair, if you are describing those
Madam
as
Chair.
tax cuts, you would not need a authorization for a tax rate increase. This is about increasing your taxes. So you are authorizing the increase of taxes without the required vote in the rules.
I think we've been very clear that we do not intend to increase taxes in this bill. Mr.
Madam
Norman.
Chairman,
So,
I'm pretty sure that, you know, we've been sitting up, we've been sitting up here for four, we've been, excuse me, we've been sitting up here for how many hours, 20 hours? We're not going, there's
Mr. Norman.
nothing
Hold
that
on
would
a minute, Mr.
convince
Norman.
Mr. Norman,
that
I have-
either
Would you
one,
yield to Mr. Norman?
He hasn't asked me
There's-
yet.
Thank you.
there's nothing that
He still
we can
hasn't
say.
asked me. I mean, Mr. Norman, right? If you'd asked me, I would probably yield to you, but
Sounds like
I have the time.
Would you
so-
yield?
I would, Mr. Norman. Thank
Thank
you
you.
very much.
I don't think there's any question that whatever we say to explain anything is going to make my good friends from the other side of the aisle vote for anything that we put forward. So what I would ask is we call for the question, and let's move through this. Thank you for yielding, and that's my request. I yield back, Ms. Hunterling.
Gentlelady yield?
I would, of course, yield, Mr.
Again, the House rules requires a supermajority vote, 3/5 for any bill that increases income taxes. And you are turning that rule off for this bill, not as a part of a standard waiver of all points of order, but specifically and intentionally. And the only reason why you would do that is because you know that this bill will increase taxes on those families who are struggling the most to put food on the table. And so that is this amendment. I think we ought to have a vote on it. And again, none of the explanations have cleared anything up. So I think we ought to have a vote on it.
Right, and just to be clear, what you are voting on is that you want to keep a provision that allows you to increase taxes without the required three-fifths vote. You all decided you didn't want to raise taxes willy-nilly, but that is what the amendment is, and I am supportive of the amendment because we shouldn't be raising taxes when people don't even know what they're doing, but this bill does raise taxes. Thank you very much, and I yield back.
Thank you, and I believe that we will be proven right again as we were in 2017. So I have no problems voting against Mr. McGovern's amendment because once this bill is all out there and it is passed, there will be no tax increases in it. And our friends can continue to speculate, but they won't be there.
But just in case, you're going to waive this rule. So I'd like a vote on it.
Yes, sir. Okay. Mr. Scott, do you wish to say something? Or can we vote on Mr. McGovern's motion? Okay. Mr. McGovern?
Madam
Mr.
Chair.
McGovern has moved to take out the last line in the rule, which says, Clause 5B of Rule 21 shall not apply to the bill or amendment thereto.
Absolutely. You got it right. Absolutely.
Okay. So, all in favor of Mr. McGovern's motion, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. No. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it, and Mr. McGovern
Ask for a roll call.
asks for a roll call. The clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Fishbach? No. Mrs. Fishbach, no. Mr. Norman? No. Mr. Norman, no. Mr. Roy? Mrs. Houchin? No. Mrs. Houchin, no. Mr. Langworthy? No. Mr. Langworthy, no. Mr. Scott? No. Mr. Scott, no. Mr. Griffith? No. Mr. Griffith, no. Mr. Jack?
No.
Mr. Jack, no. Mr. McGovern?
Aye.
Mr. McGovern, aye. Ms. Scanlon? Aye. Ms. Scanlon, aye. Mr. Neguse? Aye. Mr. Neguse, aye. Ms. Ledger-Fernandez? Aye. Ms. Ledger-Fernandez, aye. Madam Chair?
No.
Madam Chair, no.
No. The clerk will report the tally.
4 yeas, 8 nays.
The amendment is not agreed to.
Madam Chair, I have another amendment to the rule. I move the committee make an order amendment number 233 offered by Democratic Leader Jeffries, which strikes all provisions that would cause millions of Americans to lose health care and food assistance. Leader Jeffries testified passionately before this committee about the devastating effect that this bill would have on American families. And out of respect for his position as the leader of the Democratic caucus and for the millions of Americans who will be hurt by this bill, Republicans should allow Leader Jeffries to offer his amendment on the floor for an up or down vote. And I urge a yes vote on my amendment, and I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. McGovern. Is there any further discussion on Mr. McGovern's amendment for including Mr. Jeffries' amendment? Hearing none, the question is on the motion from Mr. McGovern. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no.
No.
In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. The amendment's not agreed to. Mr. McGovern requests a roll call. The clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Fishbach? No. Mrs. Fishbach, no. Mr. Norman? No. Mr. Norman, no. Mr. Roy? Mrs. Houchin? Mrs. Houchin, no. Mr. Langworthy? No. Mr. Langworthy, no. Mr. Scott? No. Mr. Scott, no. Mr. Griffith? No. Mr. Griffith, no. Mr. Jack?
No.
Mr. Jack, no. Mr. McGovern?
Aye.
Mr. McGovern, aye. Ms. Scanlon? Aye. Ms. Scanlon, aye. Mr. Neguse? Aye. Mr. Neguse, aye. Ms. Ledger-Fernandez? Aye. Ms. Ledger-Fernandez, aye. Madam Chair?
No.
Madam Chair, no.
The clerk will report the tally.
4 yeas, 8 nays.
The amendment is not agreed to. Mr. McGovern, you're recognized.
I have an amendment to the rule. I move the committee make an order amendment number 245 offered by Representative Underwood, which makes the enhanced premium tax credits that lower the costs of health insurance plans offered on the ACA marketplace permanent. This amendment is simple. It will prevent millions of working Americans from losing their health care coverage and keep health care costs from skyrocketing.
Thank you, Mr. McGovern. Is there any further discussion on Mr. McGovern's amendment? Hearing none, the question is on the amendment. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. No. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. The noes have it. The amendment's not agreed to.
I ask for a recorded vote.
Mr. McGovern asked for a recorded vote. The clerk will call the vote.
Mrs.
Roll.
Fishbach? No. Mrs. Fishbach, no. Mr. Norman? No. Mr. Norman, no. Mr. Roy? Mrs. Houchin? No. Mrs. Houchin, no. Mr. Langworthy? No. Mr. Langworthy, no. Mr. Scott? No. Mr. Scott, no. Mr. Griffith? No. Mr. Griffith, no. Mr. Jack?
No.
Mr. Jack, no. Mr. McGovern?
Aye.
Mr. McGovern, aye. Ms. Scanlon? Aye. Ms. Scanlon, aye. Mr. Neguse? Aye. Mr. Neguse, aye. Ms. Ledger-Fernandez? Aye. Ms. Ledger-Fernandez, aye. Madam Chair?
No.
Madam Chair, no.
The clerk will report the tally.
4 yeas, 8 nays.
The amendment is not agreed to.
Madam Chair.
Mr. McGovern, you're
I
recognized.
have an amendment to the rule. I move the committee make an order amendment number 267 offered by Representative Del Bene, which makes the child tax credit fully refundable and increases the credit amount from $2,000 per child to $6,360 for newborns, $4,320 for children ages 1 through 6, and $3,600 for children aged 6 through 17. The Democrats passed an historic change to the child tax credit in 2021, cutting child poverty in half. Under the Republican bill today, families making $400,000 a year get the full child tax credit, but lower income families may get nothing or just a fraction of that due to how the Republicans structured the credit. The official nonpartisan Joint Committee on Taxation estimated that next year, if the Republican bill were to pass, 17 million children who are American citizens would be blocked from getting the full value of the child tax credit. So I urge a yes vote on my amendment, and I yield back.
Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Hearing none, I call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no.
No.
In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it.
As for roll call.
Mr. McGovern requests the roll call. The clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Fishbach? No. Mrs. Fishbach, no. Mr. Norman? No. Mr. Norman, no. Mr. Roy? Mrs. Houchin? No. Mrs. Houchin, no. Mr. Langworthy? No. Mr. Langworthy, no. Mr. Scott? No. Mr. Scott, no. Mr. Griffith? No. Mr. Griffith, no. Mr. Jack?
No.
Mr. Jack, no. Mr. McGovern?
Aye.
Mr. McGovern, aye. Ms. Scanlon? Aye. Ms. Scanlon, aye. Mr. Neguse? Aye. Mr. Neguse, aye. Ms. Ledger-Fernandez? Aye. Ms. Ledger-Fernandez, aye. Madam Chair?
No.
Madam Chair, no.
Clerk will report the tally.
4 yeas, 8 nays.
The amendment is not agreed to. Is there further discussion or amendment?
Madam Chair, I have
Mr.
an amendment to
McGovern.
the rule. I move the committee make an order amendment number 250 offered by Representative Doggett, which reduces the cost of the bill by about half by ensuring only the 98% of taxpayers earning $400,000 or less each year receive a tax break, and the 2% of taxpayers earning over $400,000 do not receive any new tax breaks. Madam Chair, if Republicans want to put their money where their mouth is and provide tax relief for working families, not the millionaires or billionaires, they should support this amendment. This amendment would allow taxpayers earning $400,000 or less to receive the tax relief under the Republican proposal, but block the 2% of earners in America from receiving another tax break. This alone would save American taxpayers trillions of dollars, but I fear Republicans are too beholden to their wealthy donor class to go for it, but nonetheless, I urge a yes vote on this.
Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Hearing none, the question's on the amendment. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. No. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. The amendment is not
Ask for a
agreed to.
roll call, member.
Mr. McGovern requests a roll call. The clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Fishbach? No. Mrs. Fishbach, no. Mr. Norman? No. Mr. Norman, no. Mr. Roy? Mrs. Houchin? No. Mrs. Houchin, no. Mr. Langworthy? No. Mr. Langworthy, no. Mr. Scott? No. Mr. Scott, no. Mr. Griffith? No. Mr. Griffith, no. Mr. Jack?
No.
Mr. Jack, no. Mr. McGovern?
Aye.
Mr. McGovern, aye. Ms. Scanlon? Aye. Ms. Scanlon, aye. Mr. Neguse? Aye. Mr. Neguse, aye. Ms. Ledger Fernandez? Ms. Ledger Fernandez, aye. Madam Chair?
No.
Madam Chair, no.
The clerk will report the total.
4 yeas, 8 nays.
The amendment is not agreed to.
Madam
The
Chair?
noes have it. Mr. McGovern.
Madam Chair, so we got the manager's amendment, about a half an hour ago, and we're still trying to, comb through it to see, what the changes are and what the impacts are going to be. But there seems to be tens of billions of additional health care cuts in this manager's amendment. So you're rushing it in the dark of night, and it'll kick people off their health care. And I find that, not only concerning, quite frankly, I find that disgusting. Again, all to give tax breaks to billionaires. So I have another amendment to the rule. I move the committee make an order amendment number 40, offered by Representative Chu, which ensures that no one earning more than $10 million per year receives a tax cut. So Republicans just voted down a motion to protect tax relief for families making under $400,000 a year. This new amendment would ensure that those making over $10 million per year would not get a tax cut. So under this bill, people making over $1 million a year would get an average $82,000 tax cut compared to those making less than $50,000 who will get less than $1 per day. So the Republicans want to spend hundreds of billions of dollars on tax giveaways to those making over $10 million a year. I think we'll just wait and see. So I urge a yes vote on this.
Is there any further discussion on the amendment? I will just point out that, Mr. McGovern, in a similar situation, we have a 40-page manager's amendment. The Democrats dumped on us a 309-page manager's amendment, and we voted on it immediately.
Yeah, I don't think that had anything to do with tax cuts for millionaires or billionaires. But
Well, it was a 309-page manager's amendment. Any further discussion? Okay. All those in favor of Mr. McGovern's amendment, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no.
No.
In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it.
Yes, for a roll call.
Mr. McGovern requests a roll call. The clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Fishbach? No. Mrs. Fishbach, no. Mr. Norman? No. Mr. Norman, no. Mr. Roy? Mrs. Houchin? No. Mrs. Houchin, no. Mr. Langworthy? No. Mr. Langworthy, no. Mr. Scott? No. Mr. Scott, no. Mr. Griffith? No. Mr. Griffith, no. Mr. Jack?
No.
Mr. Jack, no. Mr. McGovern?
Aye.
Mr. McGovern, aye. Ms. Scanlon? Ms. Scanlon, aye. Mr. Neguse? Aye. Mr. Neguse, aye. Ms. Ledger Fernandez? Aye. Ms. Ledger Fernandez, aye. Madam Chair?
No.
Madam Chair, no.
The clerk will report the total.
4 yeas, 8 nays.
The noes have it. The amendment is not agreed to.
Madam Chair,
Mr. McGovern, you're recognized.
I have an amendment to the rule. I move the committee make an order amendment number 283, offered by Representative Gomez, which establishes a 39.6% tax bracket for income over $1 million. So for those following along at home, Republicans have just voted down our amendment to limit tax cuts to those making under $400,000 per year. And they blocked another amendment to ensure people making over $10 million a year won't get a tax cut. So let's see how far they'll take this. This amendment would block Republicans from giving another tax cut to Americans making over $1 billion per year in income. That's billion with a B. Republicans are kicking millions of Americans off their health care and SNAP benefits in order to finance tax cuts, in order to finance tax cuts that will help billionaires. So I'm giving Republicans one last chance to redeem themselves by voting in favor of this amendment.
Any further discussion? But I will point out, Mr. McGovern, this is the only, you're the only one who's pushing for a tax increase in
billionaires, yeah.
Piece of legislation. Yeah. We will be voting no, you will be voting yes on a tax increase. So the
I think Trump in favor of giving billionaires a tax cut. I don't know.
The motion, the
he wants to be heard.
Madam Chair.
I'm sorry, Mr. English.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Just with respect to the ranking member's amendment, and certainly something I support. But again, just to clarify, and we had this discussion previously, the ranking member proposed an amendment that would have deleted the exemption to the 3/5 rule that you all defeated. So if you did not intend to increase income taxes, then you would not have needed to include a waiver of that rule. The House rules are very clear that any income tax increase requires 3/5 support of the full House. So if you want to increase income taxes, you have to get 3/5 of the House to support it. You all decided that you did not want that rule to apply to this bill. And the only reason why you would do so is because you know that your bill does in fact increase income taxes. Otherwise, there would be no point in seeking that waiver. So yes, Mr. McGovern's amendment seeks to increase taxes on billionaires, and that is very different than the middle income tax increases that you all have, or at least are concerned about in being embedded within your bill, given the pursuit of the exemption to that rule that you pursued. Mr. McGovern, I'm happy to yield to you.
Yeah, no, and I would just say, as we pointed out multiple times, the CBO letter that we all received showing how this bill would impact the bottom 10% and the top 10%. As you can see here, the top 10% do really well. The bottom 10% actually get hurt under this bill. So maybe if you voted for this, we could take some of that money and help the bottom 10% so they don't get screwed like they're getting in this letter here. So I'd urge a yes vote on this.
Yeah. And I would just simply conclude by saying, we didn't have enough time to go through the historical record, but I actually do think that that vote y'all took a few minutes ago was unprecedented. I don't know that Mr. Norman has ever voted to waive the income tax 3/5 vote requirement in this House. I mean, I don't, and I certainly know Mr. Roy has not done that, which I suspect is why he's not here right now, because he didn't want to be on record on that particular vote, and I understand why. But in any event, I digress. I'll yield back.
You all digress a lot, and you're supposing something. We're voting on facts. Okay. So
I'd like to be heard on the
Ms.
amendment.
Ledger-Fernandez, are you seeking recognition?
Yes, Madam Chair, I'd like to be heard on Mr.
You're recognized.
Thank you so very much. I think that a really key thing is, one is you just voted to allow you to increase taxes with a simple majority. And unlike what you are doing, Mr. McGovern is being very clear, Mr. Gomez is being very clear about who he thinks should pay a teeny bit more in taxes. And that is the ultra wealthy. So it's a very clear vote. I mean, if you want to argue, because we've heard Republicans argue that this does not benefit the wealthy more than others, well, this is a way to actually allow it to go to a vote. It's very clear, very transparent. I have a similar amendment, and I'm going to yield some time to my
Again,
ranking member.
we're looking at this print. I mean,
Does Ms. Ledger-Fernandez yield?
I just yielded
yeah,
some
yeah,
time
right.
to my ranking
I
member.
mean,
Yes, thank
at
you.
the bottom of page 16, the manager's amendment strikes 10 pages from your bill that was the REINS Act. And if I remember correctly, Mr. Norman, as I recall, you said that that was the most important bill to curtail federal regulations. And that's your quote. And I don't know whether you know this or not, but the REINS Act was stricken from the bill.
We are aware of that because of the bird bath issue. It has been not completely stricken, but redone.
I think it has. I can't.
It has been redone in order to survive a bird bath. So we are aware of that. That's one of the technical changes in the 40 pages.
Yeah, whatever. Anyway, I urge a yes vote on my amendment.
Okay.
I support your amendment, and if anybody else want to speak, I will yield in time, but seeing that I yield
Mr.
back.
McGovern's amendment to raise taxes, All those in favor say aye.
On the billionaires.
Billionaires, aye.
Billionaires, billionaires,
And not
the
on-
billionaire
not on-
tax.
Not on poor people.
All those opposed, vote no. No.
That's for a roll call.
Okay, Mr. McGovern requests a roll call vote. The clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Fishbach? No. Mrs. Fishbach, no. Mr. Norman? No. Mr. Norman, no. Mr. Roy? Mrs. Houchin? No. Mrs. Houchin, no. Mr. Langworthy? No. Mr. Langworthy, no. Mr. Scott? No. Mr. Scott, no. Mr. Griffith? No. Mr. Jack?
No.
Mr. Griffith, no. Mr. Jack, no. Mr. McGovern?
Yes.
Mr. McGovern, aye. Ms. Scanlon? Aye. Ms. Scanlon, aye. Mr. Neguse? Aye. Mr. Neguse, aye. Ms. Ledger-Fernandez? Aye. Ms. Ledger-Fernandez, aye. Madam Chair?
No.
Madam Chair, no.
Clerk will report the tally.
4 yeas, 8 nays.
The amendment is not agreed to.
Madam Chair,
Mr. McGovern.
I have an amendment to the rule. I move the committee make an order amendment number 29, offered by Ranking Member Craig, which strikes harmful provisions that would slash $300 billion in food assistance for children, seniors, and veterans. Madam Chair, as I said earlier, this bill is a disaster. It is a disaster for the 16 million children, 8 million seniors, 4 million people with disabilities, and over 1 million veterans who rely on SNAP to put food on the table. This bill that you have here will cut the modest food benefits of about $2 per meal for millions of people in this country who need a little extra help to get by. The SNAP cuts contained in this bill also threaten access to school meals, because if kids get kicked off of SNAP, they are no longer directly certified to receive school meals. SNAP supports the people who matter the most to us, our moms and dads, our kids and grandparents. Cutting benefits means families will go hungry, farmers will suffer, and health care costs will go up. Support this amendment if you want to protect nutrition assistance for regular people. I urge a yes vote.
You've heard the motion from Mr. McGovern. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no.
No.
In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. The amendment's not agreed to.
Madam Chair, I have an amendment to the rule. I have a recorded vote, please.
Mr. McGovern requests a recorded vote. The clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Fishbach? No. Mrs. Fishbach, no. Mr. Norman? No. Mr. Norman, no. Mr. Roy? Mrs. Houchin? Mrs. Houchin, no. Mr. Langworthy? No. Mr. Langworthy, no. Mr. Scott? Mr. Scott, no. Mr. Griffith? No. Mr. Griffith, no. Mr. Jack?
No.
Mr. Jack, no. Mr. McGovern?
Aye.
Mr. McGovern, aye. Ms. Scanlon? Aye. Ms. Scanlon, aye. Mr. Neguse? Aye. Mr. Neguse, aye. Ms. Ledger-Fernandez? Aye. Ms. Ledger-Fernandez, aye. Madam Chair?
No.
Madam Chair, no.
The clerk will report the tally.
4 yeas, 8 nays.
The amendment is not agreed to.
Madam Chair,
Mr. McGovern.
I have an amendment to the rule. I move the committee make an order amendment number 32, offered by Representative Hayes, which prevents any cuts to the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program from taking effect until certification. These provisions will not result in a reduction of benefits. Madam Chair, throughout the course of this debate and in the Agriculture Committee, Republicans insisted that they aren't taking benefits away from people who need them. Agriculture Committee Chairman Thompson said over and over again there wouldn't be cuts to benefits. And yet, we are considering a bill that would cut SNAP benefits by $300 billion. This isn't about integrity or any other nonsense that the Republican spin machine is trying to sell to people back home. This bill will take food away from kids, working families, and people with disabilities, full stop. There's no way to achieve the kind of cuts Republicans are making without cutting benefits for those populations of people. And if you really do believe that this bill doesn't cut benefits, then this amendment should be a no-brainer. Protect SNAP for the millions of Americans who rely on modest food benefits to feed their families by voting yes on this amendment.
Is there further discussion? I say only that integrity means a lot to Republicans. And integrity of programs is key to us, and that's what we're doing in this legislation, is we are going to do everything we can to get integrity in programs to save the programs. All those in favor of Mr. McGovern's amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. No. Opinion of the chair, the noes have it.
Ask for a roll call.
Mr. McGovern requests a roll call. The clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Fishbach? No. Mrs. Fishbach, no. Mr. Norman? No. Mr. Norman, no. Mr. Roy? Mrs. Houchin? No. Mrs. Houchin, no. Mr. Langworthy? No. Mr. Langworthy, no. Mr. Scott? Mr. Scott, no. Mr. Griffith? Mr. Griffith, no. Mr. Jack?
No.
Mr. Jack, no. Mr. McGovern?
Aye.
Mr. McGovern, aye. Ms. Scanlon? Ms. Scanlon, aye. Mr. Neguse? Mr. Neguse, aye. Ms. Ledger-Fernandez? Ms. Ledger-Fernandez, aye. Madam Chair?
No.
Madam Chair, no.
Please, the clerk will report the tally.
4 yeas, 8 nays.
The amendment is not agreed to.
Madam Chair, I have an amendment to the rule. I move the committee make an order amendment number 33, offered by Representative Brown, which prevents families with children as young as 7 years of age from losing food assistance. Madam Chair, families with kids who are 7 face barriers to child care. Many in rural areas may face transportation issues and a lack of jobs, which makes finding employment tough. Cutting parents with kids as young as 7 off of food assistance decimates the entire family's food budget. It means the whole family will have less money for food. So if you want to protect kids from losing access to nutritious food, please vote yes on this amendment. If you think it's more important to give billionaires another tax break at the expense of hungry kids, then you can vote no.
Further
Madam Chair.
discussion on Mr. McGovern's amendment.
Madam Chair, I just want to
Mr.
point
Scott.
out that this is in the provisions dealing with the able-bodied adults without dependents of the law. And I want to just make sure that everybody knows that you don't have to meet all of the requirements. You can meet any of the requirements and you receive the exemption. Any of the requirements and you receive the exemption. The age 7 has absolutely nothing to do with the child. It has to do with an automatic waiver for the adults in the household. That's it. Anything else that they tell you is simply not true.
Well, no, with due respect, we heard that from the chairman, and he's wrong, and you're wrong as well. So, I mean, that somehow, that lowering the age to 7 doesn't...
A person is not, I can read it from a person is not subject to the ABOD work requirement if they are any of the following: younger than age 18 or age 63 or older, the 63 or older is the change, exempt from the general work requirement rules, pregnant, experiencing physical, mental barriers to work, experiencing homelessness, a veteran, age 24 or younger in the foster care when you return age 18, living with someone under the age of 7 in their SNAP household. You can meet any of those and you're exempt. That's it.
You're taking food away from the parent, and therefore you're taking food away from the family. I mean, I don't understand why this is so hard to get your mind around. I mean, the bottom line is you're decreasing the amount of food assistance going to a family that loses a 7-year-old child.
With all due respect, Mr. McGovern, all you have to meet is one of these to get the automatic waiver, and if you don't get the automatic waiver, you can still apply for the other waiver. With that, I yield.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. You've heard the motion from Mr. McGovern. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no.
No.
In the opinion, Chair, the noes.
Ask for a roll call vote on that.
All right. Mr. McGovern requests a roll call. The clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Fishbach? No. Mrs. Fishbach, no. Mr. Norman? Mr. Norman, no. Mr. Roy? Mrs. Houchin? Mrs. Houchin, no. Mr. Langworthy? No. Mr. Langworthy, no. Mr. Scott? No. Mr. Scott, no. Mr. Griffith? Mr. Griffith, no. Mr. Jack?
No.
Mr. Jack, no. Mr. McGovern?
Aye.
Mr. McGovern, aye. Ms. Scanlon? Aye. Ms. Scanlon, aye. Mr. Neguse? Aye. Mr. Neguse, aye. Ms. Ledger-Fernandez? Ms. Ledger-Fernandez, aye. Madam Chair?
No.
Madam Chair, no.
Clerk will report the total.
4 yeas, 8 nays.
The amendment is not agreed to.
Madam Chair, I have an amendment to the rule. I move the committee make an order amendment number 25, offered by Representative McLean Delaney, which prevents sections 1001 through 100012 from taking effect until certification. These provisions will not result in a decrease in benefits for households with children under the age of 18. And if, Mr. Scott is so confident that there's all these waivers, then this should be something he should vote for. This bill cuts the food budgets of families with kids in 2 ways. First, it imposes new time limits on SNAP for parents with kids over the age of 7. Second, it shifts the cost of benefits over to the states, who simply do not have the hundreds of millions of dollars, in some cases up to $1 billion, laying around to pay for the benefits. So if states can't meet their cost share, then they will have no choice but to reduce the benefit for the people who receive SNAP in their states. So again, this should be an easy amendment for Republicans to vote for, and I would urge a yes vote.
Any further discussion on the amendment? If not, hearing none, the question's on the amendment. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. No. In the opinion of the chair, noes have it. The amendment is not
As for
agreed to.
roll call.
Mr. McGovern requests a roll call. The clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Fishbach? No. Mrs. Fishbach, no. Mr. Norman? No. Mr. Norman, no. Mr. Roy? Mrs. Houchin? No. Mrs. Houchin, no. Mr. Langworthy? No. Mr. Langworthy, no. Mr. Scott? No. Mr. Scott, no. Mr. Griffith? No. Mr. Griffith, no. Mr. Jack?
No.
Mr. Jack, no. Ms. Montgomery?
Aye.
Mr. McGovern, aye. Ms. Scallon? Aye. Ms. Scallon, aye. Mr. Neguse? Aye. Mr. Neguse, aye. Ms. Ledger-Fernandez? Ms. Ledger-Fernandez, aye. Madam Chair?
No.
Madam Chair, no.
Clerk will report the tally.
4 yeas, 8 nays.
The amendment is not agreed to.
Madam Chair, I have an amendment to the rule. I move the committee make and order amendment number 184, offered by Ranking Member Scott and myself, which prohibits the bill from going into effect unless cuts to Medicaid and SNAP would not result in fewer families being eligible for free school meals. Madam Chair, a new report by the Urban Institute warned that up to 18.3 million kids could lose access to free school meals because of this awful bill. For many kids, free school meals provides them with the most nutritious food that they are able to access on any given day. Because of the way SNAP interacts with school meals in many states, children who lose SNAP benefits also lose direct eligibility for free and reduced meals at school. When we last considered the budget, members on this committee insisted that Republicans were not going to cut school meals. And yet we have a report right here telling us that millions of kids may lose access because of the changes. So Republicans, the changes the Republicans are making to nutritional assistance. So vote yes on this amendment if you want to protect school meals for kids. And I yield back.
Is there any further discussion?
Madam Chair.
Ms. Ledger-Fernandez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I think this really goes to what do we expect of our children when they go to school? And we know that there's study after study that says that children who are hungry cannot learn as well. And when we invest in our children, we are investing in our future. And to deprive school children of school meals is simply not consistent with what I think we should be as a nation. And so I am thankful for the ranking member for his amendment that really prioritizes the need to make sure that we have healthy school children, and I urge a yes vote on his amendment.
Thank you, Ms. Ledger-Fernandez. You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no.
No.
In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it.
I ask for a roll call, Madam Chair.
Mr. McGovern requests a roll call. The clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Fishbach? No. Mrs. Fishbach, no. Mr. Norman? No. Mr. Norman, no. Mr. Roy? Mrs. Houchin? No. Mrs. Houchin, no. Mr. Langworthy? No. Mr. Langworthy, no. Mr. Scott? No. Mr. Scott, no. Mr. Griffith? No. Mr. Griffith, no. Mr. Jack?
No.
Mr. Jack, no. Mr. McGovern?
Aye.
Mr. McGovern, aye. Ms. Scanlon? Aye. Ms. Scanlon, aye. Mr. Neguse? Aye. Mr. Neguse, aye. Ms. Ledger-Fernandez? Aye. Ms. Ledger-Fernandez, aye. Madam Chair?
No.
Madam Chair, no.
The clerk will report the tally.
4 yeas, 8 nays.
The amendment is not agreed to.
Madam Chair, I have an amendment to the rule. I move the committee make an order amendment number 68, offered by Representative Vasquez, which inserts the text of the Affordable Insulin Now Act from the 118th Congress, which was H.R. 1488, which limits cost sharing for insulin under private health insurance for a month's supply of selected insulin products at $35 or 25% of a plan's negotiated price after any price concessions, whichever is less.
You've heard the amendment by Mr. McGovern. Is there any further discussion? Ms. Ledger-Fernandez?
Madam Chair, the $35 a month insulin cap was so important, especially in Native American communities where there's high diabetes rate, especially in Latino communities, which also have a high diabetes rate. We actually have something similar in New Mexico, and it really did make a difference. It helped people to make sure they took their insulin and didn't ration it, because you need to take that insulin. And when it gets too expensive, people can't afford it. So this was, I think, a wonderful thing that the Democrats did in the 118th. But it's something that we should all own, because diabetes is running rampant in all of our communities, especially rural communities. So I support Mr. McGovern's amendment and urge a yes vote.
All those in favor of Mr. McGovern's amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no.
No.
No. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it.
Ask for roll call.
Mr. McGovern requests a roll call. The clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Fishbach? Mrs. Fishbach, no. Mr. Norman? Mr. Norman, no. Mr. Roy? Mrs. Houchin? Mrs. Houchin, no. Mr. Langworthy? Mr. Langworthy, no. Mr. Scott? Mr. Scott, no. Mr. Griffith? Mr. Griffith, no. Mr. Jack?
No.
Mr. Jack, no. Mr. McGovern?
Aye.
Mr. McGovern, aye. Ms. Scanlon? Aye. Ms. Scanlon, aye. Mr. Neguse? Mr. Neguse, aye. Ms. Ledger-Fernandez? Ms. Ledger-Fernandez, aye. Madam Chair?
No.
Madam Chair, no.
The clerk will report the tally.
4 yeas, 8 nays.
The amendment is not agreed to.
Madam
Are the-
Chair, I
Yes,
have an
Mr.
amendment to the
McGovern.
rule. I move the committee make an order amendment number 42 offered by Representative Chu, which strikes the provisions in the bill that increase costs, increase red tape, and make it harder for people to get coverage, and cause coverage loss on the ACA marketplace.
You've heard the amendment by Mr. McGovern. All those in, is further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. No. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it.
Ask for a roll call.
Mr. McGovern requests a roll call. The clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Fishbach? No. Mrs. Fishbach, no. Mr. Norman? Mr. Norman, no. Mr. Roy? Mrs. Houchin? Mrs. Houchin, no. Mr. Langworthy? Mr. Langworthy, no. Mr. Scott? Mr. Scott, no. Mr. Griffith? Mr. Griffith, no. Mr. Jack?
No.
Mr. Jack, no. Mr. McGovern?
Aye.
Mr. McGovern, aye. Ms. Scanlon? Aye. Ms. Scanlon, aye. Mr. Neguse? Mr. Neguse, aye. Ms. Ledger-Fernandez? Aye. Ms. Ledger-Fernandez, aye. Madam Chair?
No.
Madam Chair, no.
The clerk will report the tally.
4 yeas, 8 nays.
The amendment is not agreed to.
Madam
The
Chair.
Further, Mr. McGovern, you're recognized.
I have an amendment to the rule. I move the committee make an order amendment number 242 offered by Representative Gomez, which extends eligibility for the ACA premium tax credit to include children and pregnant women, including those losing Medicaid coverage. This amendment is simple. It ensures that children and pregnant women are not harmed by the Republican attack on health insurance coverage. It will prevent millions of children and pregnant women from losing their health care coverage and mitigate Republicans' deliberate health care cost increases.
Is there any further discussion to Mr. McGovern's amendment? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. No. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. The amendment's
I
not
ask for a
agreed
roll
to.
call.
Mr. McGovern requests a roll call. The clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Fishbach? No. Mrs. Fishbach, no. Mr. Norman? No. Mr. Norman, no. Mr. Roy? Mrs. Houchin? Mrs. Houchin, no. Mr. Langworthy? No. Mr. Langworthy, no. Mr. Scott? Mr. Scott, no. Mr. Griffith? Mr. Griffith, no. Mr. Jack?
No.
Mr. Jack, no. Mr. McGovern?
Aye.
Mr. McGovern, aye. Ms. Scanlon? Aye. Ms. Scanlon, aye. Mr. Neguse? Aye. Mr. Neguse, aye. Ms. Ledger-Fernandez? Ms. Ledger-Fernandez, aye. Madam Chair?
No.
Madam Chair, no.
Clerk will report the tally.
4 yeas, 8 nays.
The amendment's not agreed to. Are there further amendments?
Madam Chair, I have an amendment to the rule. I move the committee make an order amendment number 215 offered by Representative Rivas, which strikes the provision creating a moratorium on states or a political subdivision from enforcing any law or regulation limiting, restricting, or regulating artificial intelligence models, artificial intelligence systems, or automated decision systems entered into interstate commerce. Madam Chair, this amendment would strike the awful provision in this bill that makes sure that AI companies continue to operate lawlessly. As it is currently written, the Republican budget reconciliation package will place a 10-year moratorium on state-level AI regulations. This is wrong, and it must be removed. I hear from my constituents every single day that they are worried about AI. They're worried about how it will affect their jobs, their families, their government, their health care, and their children. People are scared and excited about what AI will do to the world around them. Now, Republicans slipped a provision in this bill that says to all states, red or blue, your legislation on AI doesn't count. Throw it in the trash. This is a sneaky and it's authoritarian. This is a bad faith effort to leave AI unregulated under the guise of dispelling regulatory burdens. I mean, truth be told, I mean, this body ought to legislate on this topic, but no one's had the guts to do it. So the states have stepped up, and they have taken this matter into their hands. And that you're going in and basically telling states that what they've done doesn't matter, I think is terrible. So I urge a yes vote on my amendment.
Is there further discussion on Mr. McGovern's amendment?
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
I agree. Congress needs to legislate on this, but it's not possible to do it at the state level, so I'm opposed to this.
Okay,
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Scott. The vote is on Mr. McGovern's amendment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no.
No.
Roll call.
Mr. McGovern requests a roll call. Clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Fishbach? Mrs. Fishbach, no. Mr. Norman? No. Mr. Norman, no. Mr. Roy? Mrs. Houchin? No. Mrs. Houchin, no. Mr. Langworthy? No. Mr. Langworthy, no. Mr. Scott? No. Mr. Scott, no. Mr. Griffith? No. Mr. Griffith, no. Mr. Jack?
No.
Mr. Jack, no. Mr. McGovern?
Aye.
Mr. McGovern, aye. Ms. Scanlon? Aye. Ms. Scanlon, aye. Mr. Neguse? Mr. Neguse, aye. Ms. Ledger Fernandez? Ms. Ledger Fernandez, aye. Madam Chair?
No.
Madam Chair, no.
Clerk will report the total.
4 yeas, 8 nays.
The amendment is not agreed to.
Madam Chair,
Mr. McGovern?
I have an amendment to the rule. I move the committee make an order amendment number 202 offered by Representative Ocasio-Cortez, which subtitle A of Title 4 shall not go into effect until the Inspector General of the Department of Energy certifies that the implementation of sections 41002 and 41004 of this subtitle will not result in increased risks of corruption or pay-to-play politics that would adversely impact the integrity of the permitting processes of the Department of Education and the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. Madam Chair, these unbelievable provisions essentially mean that you can give the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission $10 million and they automatically have to approve your pipeline, or that you can give DOE $1 million and they automatically find that your LNG exports are in the public interest and can move forward. And guess what? Every state and local government no longer has a say. They have to approve your pipeline if you pay $10 million. This is a pay-to-play permitting bribery scheme, plain and simple. And it's becoming all too commonplace in this administration. And so I urge a yes vote on my amendment, and I yield back.
Further discussion. All those in favor of Mr. McGovern's amendment say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no.
No.
Independent chair, the noes have
I
it.
ask for a roll call.
Mr. McGovern requests a roll call. The clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Fishbach? No. Mrs. Fishbach, no. Mr. Norman? No. Mr. Norman, no. Mr. Roy? Mrs. Houchin? No. Mrs. Houchin, no. Mr. Langworthy? No. Mr. Langworthy, no. Mr. Scott? No. Mr. Scott, no. Mr. Griffith? Mr. Griffith, no. Mr. Jack?
No.
Mr. Jack, no. Mr. McGovern?
Aye.
Mr. McGovern, aye. Ms. Scanlon? Aye. Ms. Scanlon, aye. Mr. Neguse? Aye. Mr. Neguse, aye. Ms. Ledger Fernandez? Ms. Ledger Fernandez, aye. Madam Chair?
No.
Madam Chair, no.
The clerk will report the total.
4 yeas, 8 nays.
The amendment is not agreed to. Further discussion or amendments?
Madam
Ms.
Chair.
Scanlon, you're recognized.
I have an amendment to the rule. I move the committee make in order amendment number 374, offered by Representative Mike Thompson, which would strike section 112029, which eliminates the $200 tax on silencers, which has been in place since 1934. Before we proceed to discuss this, can I ask, are any of our colleagues, are you aware of any changes that might have been made in the manager's amendment to this provision regarding silencers? You are. Okay, so you understand that the manager's amendment, which we just got, less than an hour ago, removes silencers from the requirements of the National Firearms Act, which was passed in 1934, and which since that time has required that silencers be subject to a background check and be registered, and up until the time of the underlying bill, also had a $200 registration fee. But all of a sudden, we started this hearing by noting that nobody calls a hearing for 1 o'clock in the morning unless you're trying to hide something. So now we're 21 hours later. We've seen the sun come up, a little cloudy. We've seen the sun go down. So now here we are again in the dark of night, and all of a sudden, there's a magical amendment in the manager's amendment that is going to put more dangerous firearm equipment out on the streets. So here we are. You're sneaking this provision in that not only gets rid of the firearm registration fee for a silencer, but also removes the requirement that they have to be registered at all. Over 400 silencers were found on or traced to violent crime scenes in 2023 alone. So in addition to removing silencers from the definition in the National Firearms Act, there's no discussion of why such
Ma'am,
a
if you
policy
would yield for
change
just a
would
second.
happen. Also, the removal of the excise tax here is going to cost American taxpayers $1.5 billion. So it's a brazen attempt to make it easier to commit violent crimes. So I think this is sneaky. I think it's a radical policy change with no explanation for why this longstanding federal policy should be overturned in the middle of the night, and I'd urge a yes vote on my amendment. Yes, and I'll yield to Mr. McGovern.
Mr. Scott.
It's actually not a silencer, it's a suppressor. It doesn't suppress.
I'm sorry, it is still my time. If we look at your manager's amendment, it says that the section is amended by striking any silencer. The
Okay.
whole
Well,
National
then I
Firearms
apologize.
Act-
I don't want to argue with you.
And you can
but-
look up the National Firearms Act. I'm sorry, it's
Okay.
still my time, and I'm yielding to Mr. McGovern.
I would just say, I
Oh,
support.
never mind then. I thought you wanted to engage in a debate, but that's okay. I'm
Yeah.
opposed to it.
I had
Yeah,
yielded to
yeah,
him
yeah.
first.
Of course you are. But I mean, I support the gentlelady's amendment because, quite frankly, what is in this reconciliation bill, does more to support assassins than it does American families. Yeah, well, you know what? Talk to law enforcement. Talk to people who have been victims of gun violence. I know you think it's funny, but I don't. With that, I yield back to the gentlelady.
Any further discussion?
I'll yield back.
I'd like to be recognized, Madam Chair.
Mr. Neguse, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess, and I'm happy to engage in a debate with my colleague. I always enjoy debating with Mr. Scott. The confusion I have about this particular provision, obviously for all of the reasons that Ms. Scanlon and Ranking Member McGovern stated, I think this is a dangerous, deeply problematic provision that you all have put into this piece of legislation. The question I have is, this was not in the bill that we were marking up. So whose vote was bought with this provision that silencers will no longer need to be registered with the ATF or subject to background checks, purchasers, that is to say? Like, what member was on the fence about this bill and then went to Republican leadership and said, I know you're eliminating the tax on silencers, but if you can just eliminate all regulation of silencers, I will vote for this bill. Who's?
It did not eliminate all regulations of silencers.
Sure.
It's still subject. No, it doesn't.
No.
You don't know anything about this one, brother.
I
know
haven't
this
yielded
one.
to you yet, Mr. Scott.
I have 10 of them.
I haven't
have
yielded to you yet.
I have 10 plus. I'm not
I
going
haven't
to
yielded to you yet, Mr. Scott. So,
Mr. Neguse has the time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This provision very clearly states that you no longer have to register silencers with the ATF. Is that wrong? Is that incorrect?
That does not mean that you will not go through a background check. It will be
understand.
sold the same way a rifle
That's not the
is.
question I asked, Mr. Scott. I asked
Don't
whether
yell
this
at me.
provision,
I gave you an answer. You don't like it. It's over with.
this provision very clearly states
Let Mr. Neguse ask a question and answer it, please, Mr. Scott.
the national. The National Firearm Act, for 100 years, since the days of Al Capone, which is the impetus behind the National Firearm Act in the first instance, has required registration for those purchasing silencers. That was the case up until 45 minutes ago, when Republicans negotiated the elimination of that registration requirement. Fairly straightforward. I don't really know who in the Republican caucus was adamant that this provision was the key to unlocking their support.
And I don't believe anyone here, excuse me for interrupting, but I don't think anybody here knows that either, Mr. Neguse.
Got it. Well, that's helpful.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam
There we
Chair.
go.
That was that's a helpful
Let's
answer.
cut to the chase.
And maybe we might find out on the floor during debate. I mean, hopefully, I guess what I will say, and I'll close here, is that because I know many of our colleagues are watching, is they're waiting to get to the floor for the debate, that perhaps whoever it was that made this request of Speaker Johnson and said, I need this provision so that I can vote for this bill, that they might come to the floor and help explain to the American public why that was.
Maybe we could just follow the money, and that's how we could figure out who did it.
Another way to do it, too.
Thank you.
I yield back the balance of my time. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor from Ms. Scanlon. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no.
No.
In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. Ms. Scanlon requests a recorded vote. The clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Fishbach? No. Mrs. Fishbach, no. Mr. Norman? No. Mr. Norman, no. Mr. Roy? Mrs. Houchin? Mrs. Houchin, no. Mr. Langworthy? No. Mr. Langworthy, no. Mr. Scott? No. Mr. Scott, no. Mr. Griffith? Mr. Griffith, no. Mr. Jack?
No.
Mr. Jack, no. Mr. McGovern?
Aye.
Mr. McGovern, aye. Ms. Scanlon?
Aye.
Ms. Scanlon, aye. Mr. Neguse?
Aye.
Mr. Neguse, aye. Ms. Ledger Fernandez? Ms. Ledger Fernandez, aye. Madam Chair?
No.
Madam Chair, no.
Clerk will report the total.
4 yeas, 8 nays.
The amendment is not agreed to. Ms.
Madam Chair.
Scanlon, you're recognized.
I have an amendment to the rule. I move the committee make in order amendment number 27 offered by Representative Johnson, which strikes bill text that would prevent the courts from enforcing a contempt citation against the government for failure to comply with an injunction or a temporary restraining order. As we discussed previously when some of our colleagues were here, certainly Representative Johnson, this is a critical part of separation of powers, that the courts be able to effectuate their decisions. So I'd urge a yes vote.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion by Ms. Scanlon say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no.
No.
No. In the opinion of
I'd
the
ask for a
chair,
roll call vote.
Ms. Scanlon requests a roll call. The clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Fishbach? No. Mrs. Fishbach, no. Mr. Norman? No. Mr. Norman, no. Mr. Roy? Mrs. Houchin? Mrs. Houchin, no. Mr. Langworthy? No. Mr. Langworthy, no. Mr. Scott? No. Mr. Scott, no. Mr. Griffith? Mr. Griffith, no. Mr. Jack?
No.
Mr. Jack, no. Mr. McGovern?
Aye.
Mr. McGovern, aye. Ms. Scanlon?
Aye.
Ms. Scanlon, aye. Mr. Neguse? Aye. Mr. Neguse, aye. Ms. Ledger Fernandez? Aye. Ms. Ledger Fernandez, aye. Madam Chair?
No.
Madam Chair, no.
Clerk will report the total.
4 yeas, 8 nays.
The amendment is not agreed to. Ms. Scanlon, you're recognized.
I have an amendment to the rule. I move the committee make in order amendment number 150 offered by myself, which prohibits funds from Title VII, Subtitle A, Immigration Matters, from being used to implement or defend Executive Order 14160 entitled Protecting the Meaning and Value of American Citizenship. President Trump has executed a blatantly unconstitutional executive order which purports to revoke the 14th Amendment's guarantee of birthright citizenship, a right that reflects the foundational American value that we don't define our nationhood by bloodlines or parentage, but by our shared democratic values, and therefore no funds under this bill should be used to enforce it. In the U.S., birthright citizenship is guaranteed by the Citizenship Clause in the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. It was ratified in 1868. The clause, very first sentence in the 14th Amendment, provides that all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state where they reside. On January 20th of this year, President Trump issued a prospective executive order declaring that for certain persons born in the United States, neither the 14th Amendment nor the federal statute incorporating similar language conferred U.S. citizenship. Specifically, this executive order sought to exclude from U.S. citizenship two categories of persons whose fathers are not citizens or lawful permanent residents: those whose mothers were unlawfully present in the United States on their date of birth, and those whose mothers were lawfully present in the country at the time of birth, but only on a temporary basis, such as a mother present in the U.S. on a student, work, or tourist visa. A really tortured definition and description of who he intended this executive order to impact. Every court which has looked at this executive order has found it to be unconstitutional and unenforceable. The executive order has been enjoined by 4 different judges appointed by Presidents Reagan, Bush, Obama, and Biden. 2 circuits have agreed to keep the executive order enjoined, and now implementation is pending before the Supreme Court. You know, right-wing extremists have repeatedly failed to convince the public or Congress to end birthright citizenship through legal means, so now they're trying to cheer on from the sidelines as the president tries to change the Constitution without the American people's consent. So I would offer this amendment. It is straight up preventing the use of taxpayer funds to enforce an unconstitutional executive order, and I would yield back.
Is there any further discussion on the amendment by Ms. Scanlon? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no.
No.
In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it.
I'd ask for a
Ms.
recorded
Scanlon asked for a recorded vote. The clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Fishbach? No. Mrs. Fishbach, no. Mr. Norman?
Mr. Norman? No.
Mr. Norman, no. Mr. Roy? Mrs. Houchin? No. Mrs. Houchin, no. Mr. Langworthy? No. Mr. Langworthy, no. Mr. Scott? No. Mr. Scott, no. Mr. Griffith? Mr. Griffith, no. Mr. Jack?
No.
Mr. Jack, no. Mr. McGovern? Aye. Mr. McGovern, aye. Ms. Scanlon?
Aye.
Ms. Scanlon, aye. Mr. Neguse? Aye. Mr. Neguse, aye. Ms. Ledger Fernandez? Ms. Ledger Fernandez, aye. Madam Chair?
No.
Madam Chair, no.
Clerk will report the total.
4 yeas, 8 nays.
The amendment is not agreed to. Ms. Scanlon,
Chair.
you're recognized.
I have an amendment to the rule. I move the committee make in order amendment number 238 offered by Minority Whip Clark, which strikes the section that defunds Planned Parenthood and would reduce access to life-saving cancer screenings and reproductive health care. This bill includes a provision that directly blocks Medicaid patients from receiving care at Planned Parenthood, the nation's largest provider of reproductive health services. Of course, we all know that Medicaid is already not allowed to cover abortions, so this provision is a clear attack on women and their health care writ large. I urge a yes vote on my amendment, and I yield back.
Thank you. You've heard the amendment offered by Ms. Scanlon. Is there any further discussion?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Ms. Ledger Fernandez, you're recognized.
Thank you very much. I just want to point out that one of the concerns that the Democrats have is that throughout this bill, there is a constant attack on women's health care. I'll be offering an amendment later about the manager's amendment, but, you know, to not fund the place where women get health care, cancer screenings, pap smears, mammograms, basic care that women need, and Planned Parenthood is often the only place they can get it, especially in rural areas. I would urge you to think about the women in your districts and their need for health care and prioritize that. And for that reason, I support this amendment.
Thank you. You've heard the amendment from Ms. Scanlon. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. Ms. Scanlon requests a recorded vote. The clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Fishbach? No. Mrs. Fishbach, no. Mr. Norman? No. Mr. Norman, no. Mr. Roy? Mrs. Houchin? No. Mrs. Houchin, no. Mr. Langworthy? No. Mr. Langworthy, no. Mr. Scott? No. Mr. Scott, no. Mr. Griffith? No. Mr. Griffith, no. Mr. Jack?
No.
Mr. Jack, no. Mr. McGovern? Aye. Mr. McGovern, aye. Ms. Scanlon?
Aye.
Ms. Scanlon, aye. Mr. Neguse? Aye. Mr. Neguse, aye. Ms. Ledger Fernandez? Ms. Ledger Fernandez, aye. Madam Chair?
No.
Madam Chair, no.
The clerk will report the total.
4 yeas, 8 nays.
The amendment is not agreed to. Ms. Scanlon, you're recognized.
Thank you. I have an amendment to the rule. I move the committee make an order amendment number 411 offered by myself, which strikes section 42106, which repeals and rescinds funds to address air pollution in schools. I yield back.
Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Hearing none, the vote is on the motion by Ms. Scanlon. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no.
No.
No. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. Ms. Scanlon requests a recorded vote. The clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Fishbach? Mrs. Fishbach, no. Mr. Norman? Mr. Norman, no. Mr. Roy? Mrs. Houchin? Mrs. Houchin, no. Mr. Langworthy? Mr. Langworthy, no. Mr. Scott? Mr. Scott, no. Mr. Griffith? Mr. Griffith, no. Mr. Jack?
No.
Mr. Jack, no. Mr. McGovern? Mr. McGovern, aye. Ms. Scanlon?
Aye.
Ms. Scanlon, aye. Mr. Neguse? Mr. Neguse, aye. Ms. Ledger Fernandez? Ms. Ledger Fernandez, aye. Madam Chair?
No.
Madam Chair, no.
Clerk will report the total.
4 yeas, 8 nays.
The amendment is not agreed to. Ms. Scanlon, you're recognized.
Madam Chair, I have an amendment to the rule. I move the committee make in order amendment number 71 offered by Representative Raskin, which prevents Title VII from taking effect until the Attorney General certifies that any grant administered by the Office of Justice Programs of the Department of Justice that was terminated after January 20th, 2025 has been reinstated. Last month, President Trump's Department of Justice abruptly cut hundreds of millions of dollars in grant funding that had previously been awarded to support law enforcement, crime prevention, and public safety programs across the country. Despite broad bipartisan support for these grant programs administered by the Department of Justice Office of Justice Programs, and President Trump's repeated promises to the American people that he would prioritize public safety, support victims of crime, and address the opioid crisis, his own Department of Justice abruptly informed more than 300 OJP grantees that their work, quote, no longer effectuated the program goals or agency priorities and does not align with this administration's priorities, end quote. Organizations in at least 37 states across the country lost funding, red states and blue states and urban, suburban, and rural areas, and the work of those organizations, which benefits jurisdictions all across our country, would help ensure that all citizens have access to effective systems of safety and justice, regardless of where they live. The terminated grants totaling an estimated $500 million provided federal support for violence reduction, policing and prosecution, victim services, juvenile justice and child protection, substance use and mental health treatment, corrections and reentry, justice system enhancements, research and evaluation, and other state and local level public safety functions. During the House Judiciary Committee's consideration of the reconciliation bill on April 30th, Ranking Member Raskin and committee Democrats tried to restore that funding. Our Republican colleagues rejected it, but cutting funding for these vital programs threatens public safety, harms victims and survivors of violent crime, and hinders crime prevention efforts. So I urge a yes vote on the amendment, and I yield back.
You've heard the motion by Ms. Scanlon. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. No. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. Ms. Scanlon requests a roll call. The clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Fishbach? No. Mrs. Fishbach, no. Mr. Norman? No. Mr. Norman, no. Mr. Roy? Mrs. Houchin? No. Mrs. Houchin, no. Mr. Langworthy? No. Mr. Langworthy, no. Mr. Scott? No. Mr. Scott, no. Mr. Griffith? No. Mr. Griffith, no. Mr. Jack?
No.
Mr. Jack, no. Mr. McGovern? Aye. Mr. McGovern, aye. Ms. Scanlon?
Aye.
Scanlon, aye. Mr. Neguse? Aye. Mr. Neguse, aye. Ms. Ledger Fernandez? Ms. Ledger Fernandez, aye. Madam Chair?
No.
Madam Chair, no.
The clerk will report the total.
4 yeas, 8 nays.
The amendment is not agreed to. Ms. Scanlon, you're recognized.
Thank you. I have an amendment to the rule. I move the committee make in order amendment number 35, offered by Representative Jayapal, which prohibits the use of funds in Subtitle A of Title VII from being used by Immigration and Customs Enforcement to detain or deport U.S. citizens.
The amendment is straightforward. It should be uncontroversial. It would ensure that none of the funds in this bill are used to detain U.S. citizens for immigration enforcement. Reports of U.S. citizens being wrongfully arrested and detained started coming out just days after this administration was sworn in. Some citizens have been detained for merely speaking Spanish. Others were held for days despite consistently telling the Department of Homeland Security that they were citizens. ICE detention of U.S. citizens because of reckless and lawless immigration enforcement is both unconstitutional and dangerous. Even ICE acknowledges that it has no authority to arrest and detain U.S. citizens. Their internal guidance says, as a matter of law, ICE cannot assert its civil immigration enforcement authority to arrest or detain a U.S. citizen. Nevertheless, we've seen detentions of U.S. citizens occur. We've heard about deportation of children, U.S. citizens. So Congress has a duty to act. We have to ensure that government funding, taxpayer dollars, doesn't support illegal or unconstitutional actions. Therefore, I offer this amendment and urge a yes vote. I yield back.
Any further discussion on the amendment? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no? No. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. Ms. Scanlon requests a recorded vote.
Mrs.
Clerk
Fishbach?
will call the vote.
Mrs. Fishbach, no. Mr. Norman? No. Mr. Norman, no. Mr. Roy? Mrs. Houchin? Mr. Langworthy? No. Mr. Langworthy, no. Mr. Scott? No. Mr. Scott, no. Mr. Griffith? No. Mr. Griffith, no. Mr. Jack?
No.
Mr. Jack, no. Mr. McGovern?
Aye.
Mr. McGovern, aye. Ms. Scanlon?
Aye.
Ms. Scanlon, aye. Mr. Neguse? Aye. Mr. Neguse, aye. Ms. Ledger Fernandez?
Aye.
Ms. Ledger Fernandez, aye. Madam Chair?
No.
Madam Chair, no.
The clerk will report the total.
4 yeas, 7 nays.
The amendment is not agreed to. Mr. Neguse, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had one amendment that I had planned to introduce. The necessity for that amendment has been obviated, but I wonder if I might be recognized for a minute just to explain why, and then I'll hand it off to Ms. Ledger Fernandez. I had intended to offer an amendment with respect to the provision in two provisions within the bill that would have overturned resource management plans in Colorado, and secondly, the land conveyance issue that we had discussed at great length earlier today. Both of those provisions were removed from the underlying bill. And so I want to thank Representative Zinke, who was very adamant in building a coalition necessary to make the case about removing those provisions. I also want to thank Representative Lee, Representative Horsford, and Representative Titus, each of whom were also, as you know, Madam Chair, from their testimony today, very engaged in making the case that this is not a precedent that the committee should adopt. I'm happy to thank Mr. Langworthy as well. I don't know if my Chautauqua references perhaps played a role in that, but in event, I'm sure that put it right over the top, but in any event. So I am glad that that provision is no longer in this larger bill, and so I will not pursue the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Neguse. Are there any further amendments? Ms. Ledger Fernandez, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I want to offer my first amendment, where I move the committee to add a self-executed second-degree amendment to the manager's amendment, striking the assertion of a new section 44202, which is on page 14 of your manager's amendment, because this would result in at least 300,000 people losing health care coverage. And more importantly, this is the Republicans' attempt to have a national abortion ban. This is their attempt to have a national abortion ban because it would eliminate abortion coverage for marketplace plans or prohibit cost-sharing reduction for plans that maintain abortion coverage. So what you're basically doing is saying if anybody is getting their health coverage through the marketplace, you are putting a disincentive on there so they will not be able to provide abortion. It's a very sneaky amendment in the manager's amendment, but I think we all need to call it out, and so that's why it's the first amendment I am bringing, because that is in effect what it does. And I think that we heard today from Whip Clark about the difficulty of getting reproductive health care, and this is extraordinary in what it would do. And I shared my own personal story, which, given the kind of health care I was undergoing, could have resulted in what might have been considered an abortion, despite the fact that I was just trying to save my life. So these are the kinds of unintended consequences, but this is a very intentional consequence of what's in this bill. And so I urge that Americans understand what's happening here, and that women understand what's happening there in this bill. And it's at the last minute. What, we got it, a couple of hours ago, and they're going to vote on it in a few hours, they've promised us.
Thank you, Ms. Leisure-Fernandez. You've heard the motion by Ms. Leisure-Fernandez. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. No. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. Ms. Leisure-Fernandez requests a recorded vote. The clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Fishbach?
No.
Mrs. Fishbach, no. Mr. Norman? No. Mr. Norman, no. Mr. Roy? Mrs. Houchin? Mr. Langworthy? No. Mr. Langworthy, no. Mr. Scott? No. Mr. Scott, no. Mr. Griffith? No. Mr. Griffith, no. Mr. Jack?
No.
Mr. Jack, no. Mr. McGovern? Aye. Mr. McGovern, aye. Ms. Scanlon?
Aye.
Ms. Scanlon, aye. Mr. Neguse? Aye. Mr. Neguse, aye. Ms. Ledger-Fernandez?
Aye.
Ms. Ledger-Fernandez, aye. Madam Chair?
No.
Madam Chair, no.
Clerk will report the total.
4 yeas, 7 nays.
The amendment is not agreed to. Are there
Madam
further
Chair.
amendments? Ms. Leisure-Fernandez, you're
Madam Chair, I have amendment to the rule. I move the committee make and order amendment number 47, which is offered by Representative Sykes. Representative Sykes appeared before us and made an impassioned claim as to why we needed to protect Medicaid. And we have heard those on the day say, but this is not really cutting Medicaid. Well, this amendment is your chance to actually vote consistent with some of those statements. So, Madam Chair, I urge a yes vote so that we can actually have a debate on the floor on Representative Sykes' amendment. And I yield back.
You've heard the motion by Ms. Leisure-Fernandez. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no.
No.
In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it.
Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Leisure-Fernandez requests a roll call vote. The clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Fishbach? No. Mrs. Fishbach, no. Mr. Norman? Mr. Norman, no. Mr. Roy? Mrs. Houchin? Mr. Langworthy? Mrs. Houchin, no. Mr. Langworthy? No. Mr. Langworthy, no. Mr. Scott? No. Mr. Scott, no. Mr. Griffith? No. Mr. Griffith, no. Mr. Jack?
No.
Mr. Jack, no. Mr. McGovern? Yes. Mr. McGovern, aye. Ms. Scanlon?
Aye.
Scanlon, aye. Mr. Neguse? Aye. Mr. Neguse, aye. Ms. Ledger-Fernandez?
Aye.
Ms. Ledger-Fernandez, aye. Madam Chair?
No.
Madam Chair, no.
Clerk will report the total.
4 yeas, 8 nays.
The amendment is not agreed to.
Madam
Any
Chair.
further amendments? Ms. Leisure-Fernandez, you're
Madam Chair, I have an amendment to the rule. I move the committee make an order amendment number 485 offered by Representative Byer, which strikes the elimination of the electricity investment protection tax credits in order to keep electricity prices low. This reconciliation bill amounts to a full repeal of the clean energy tax credit Democrats established through Inflation Reduction Act. But the thing is, this is a way of lowering costs for American families. According to the Department of Energy, in just the last 10 years, costs have declined significantly for many technologies, including distributed solar, down 26%, land-based wind, down 41%, utility-scale solar, down 73%. What other kind of energy is going down in these kinds of degrees. So the Inflation Reduction Act, the renewable energy, the clean energy that Americans want, it is also saving Americans money. In fact, in New Mexico, where, as you know, I've explained, we also are a fossil fuel producing state, we're developing clean energy power plants, manufacturing facilities, we're creating jobs, we're lowering costs. People want us to keep doing this, but Republicans want to go back in time. You know, I feel like we're in the 19th century and Republicans are arguing that gas lamps are better than electric light bulbs, and Gesundheit and God bless, Madam Chair. So when Republicans talk about energy dominance, why are they giving up on the energy of the future? If we want to be truly energy dominant and compete in what is expected to be, listen to this, a $2 trillion global clean energy market. If you do not keep these credits in existence, you are basically saying, China, take it all. You lead the world. Well, I don't think we should do that. We have the resources here. Let's vote in favor of the amendment, or at least let our members decide whether they should keep it. With that, Madam Chair, I urge a yes vote and yield back.
Thank you, Ms. Leisure-Fernandez. You've heard the motion from Ms. Leisure-Fernandez. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no.
No.
In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. Noes have it. Ms. Leisure-Fernandez requests a recorded vote. The clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Fishbach? No. Mrs. Fishbach, no. Mr. Norman? No. Mr. Norman, no. Mr. Roy? Mrs. Houchin? No. Mrs. Houchin, no. Mr. Langworthy? No. Mr. Langworthy, no. Mr. Scott? No. Mr. Scott, no. Mr. Griffith? No. Mr. Griffith, no. Mr. Jack?
No.
Mr. Jack, no. Mr. McGovern? Aye. Mr. McGovern, aye. Ms. Scanlon?
Aye.
Ms. Scanlon, aye. Mr. Neguse?
Aye.
Mr. Neguse, aye. Ms. Leisure-Fernandez?
Aye.
Ms. Leisure-Fernandez, aye. Madam Chair?
No.
Madam Chair, no.
The clerk will report the total.
4 yeas, 8 nays.
The amendment is not agreed to.
Madam Chair,
Ms. Leisure-Fernandez.
I have an amendment to the rule. I move the committee make an order amendment number 483 offered by myself, which protects state budgets and education and health care funding from reductions in oil and gas revenues. So basically, what we did in the House Natural Resources is we reduced oil and gas royalty rates. Now, the problem is oil and gas producing states share in the federal royalty rates. So for those states who have federal lands, they're going to be receiving less royalties. And let's look at how this happened. Act 1, Trump promised to scrap climate laws and to do what oil and gas wanted if U.S. oil bosses donated $1 billion to the Trump campaign. Act number 2, Trump starts living up to that promise. He takes aim at city and state climate laws in an executive order. And now act number 3, cuts to oil and gas royalty rates in the budget reconciliation. And they are going to reduce the money flowing to states. And, you know, my colleague across the aisle pointed out that New Mexico does receive oil and gas, but what this would do, and our land commissioner, whose job it is to try to make sure we get as much money off of those oil and gas leases, wrote us a letter in House Natural Resources pointing out that this would be almost a almost a $500 billion hit to our state because of what we will be doing here. So on behalf of my state, of Colorado, of North Dakota, of all of those other states that have oil and gas producing, I urge a yes vote on my amendment, and I yield back.
You've heard the amendment from Ms. Leisure-Fernandez. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no.
No.
In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. The
A
noes
recorded
have it.
vote.
Ms. Leisure-Fernandez requests a recorded vote. The clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Fishbach, no. Mr. Norman? No. Mr. Norman, no. Mr. Roy? Mrs. Houchin? No. Mrs. Houchin, no. Mr. Langworthy? No. Mr. Langworthy, no. Mr. Scott? No. Mr. Scott, no. Mr. Griffith? No. Mr. Griffith, no. Mr. Jack?
No.
Mr. Jack, no. Mr. McGovern?
Aye.
Mr. McGovern, aye. Ms. Scanlon?
Aye.
Ms. Scanlon, aye. Mr. Neguse?
Aye.
Mr. Neguse, aye. Ms. Ledger Fernandez?
Aye.
Ms. Ledger Fernandez, aye. Madam Chair?
No.
Madam Chair, no.
Clerk will report the total.
4 yeas, 8 nays.
The amendment is not agreed to.
Madam Chair, I would offer as my last amendment, there are so many issues that we heard about today that deserve to have a vote on the floor. The amendments, there used to be a time when I remember we would show up and there'd be votes. You'd have to make decisions. But what happens in rules now is there's never any more amendments. They're all closed rules. But this one I think is really key, and I'm going to offer it as my last amendment because this actually goes to the fact that when we look at that chart that shows that working families, low-income families are going to, they're going to basically, they're going to get a tax hike in essence. They're going to lose out under this bill. But we could change that. We could change that if we struck Section 11004, the extension of the increased child tax credit, and replaced it with H.R. 27633, the American Family Act. And what this would do, this would put the full child tax credit, fully refundable, in the bill. If we care about lifting children out of poverty, making sure that families get to decide, and not only that, making sure that those who earn less get the full child tax credit, so that it's not just the wealthy who are getting the full child tax credit. It makes a lot of sense. And, you know, this is one of those things where you guys just put Trump on the baby bonds. We should have put Biden on the child tax credit that we passed, right? But that's the thing, is we just believe in making a difference for people, not plastering names all over the place. But it was good law when we had it, when the Democrats passed it, and it existed in Biden. We should bring it back. And with that, Madam Chair, I yield back. And before I yield back, though,
I have one more amendment.
oh, you're going to do an amendment? Okay. In that case, I yield back.
Thank you. Good. Oh, question on your amendment. Yes. I didn't think you made it. You made an amendment. Right. Thank you. Yes. Okay. All those in favor of Ms. Ledger Fernandez amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. No. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it.
You want a roll call? Roll call.
Ms. Ledger Fernandez requests a roll call. The clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Fishbach?
No.
Mrs. Fishbach, no. Mr. Norman?
Mr. Norman? No.
Mr. Norman, no. Mr. Roy? Mrs. Houchin? Mrs. Houchin, no. Mr. Langworthy? No. Mr. Langworthy, no. Mr. Scott? No. Mr. Scott, no. Mr. Griffith? No. Mr. Griffith, no. Mr. Jack?
No.
Mr. Jack, no. Mr. McGovern?
Aye.
Mr. McGovern, aye. Ms. Scanlon?
Aye.
Ms. Scanlon, aye. Mr. Neguse? Aye. Mr. Neguse, aye. Ms. Ledger Fernandez? Ms. Ledger Fernandez, aye. Madam Chair?
No.
Madam Chair, no.
The clerk will report the tally.
4 yeas, 8 nays.
The amendment is not agreed to. Mr. McGovern, you recognize.
Madam Chairman, I just have another amendment to the rule. I move the committee make an order amendment number 2 offered by Representative Gillen, which strikes the limitation on the state and local tax deduction. But before we vote on this last amendment, I just want to recap some of what just happened here tonight. So Republicans on this committee voted against raising taxes on billionaires, voted against following a House rule that requires a 3/5 vote to raise income taxes, you know, just in case this great, beautiful bill of theirs raises taxes on regular working people, which I think we all believe it does. But they're insulating themselves by basically waiving the 3/5 requirement. And Republicans voted against protecting Medicaid benefits. They voted against protecting SNAP benefits for children. So I guess more children will have to go hungry. And they voted against an amendment to restore NIH funding for critical cancer research and other important medical research. and I think this is all shameful. So these votes basically show us where your priorities and your values are. And as I said at 1 o'clock in the morning, when you vote for this, you own it. And so with that, Madam Chair, I urge a yes vote on my amendment and urge you to call the question.
Okay. You've heard the motion by Mr. McGovern. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no.
No.
In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it.
Ask for a roll call.
Mr. McGovern requests a roll call vote. Clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Fishbach? No. Mrs. Fishbach, no. Mr. Norman? No. Mr. Norman, no. Mr. Roy? Mrs. Houchin? No. Mrs. Houchin, no. Mr. Langworthy? No. Mr. Langworthy, no. Mr. Scott? No. Mr. Scott, no. Mr. Griffith? No. Mr. Griffith, no. Mr. Jack?
No.
Mr. Jack, no. Mr. McGovern?
Aye.
Mr. McGovern, aye. Ms. Scanlon?
Aye.
Ms. Scanlon, aye. Mr. Neguse? Aye. Mr. Neguse, aye. Ms. Ledger Fernandez? Aye. Ms. Ledger Fernandez, aye. Madam Chair?
No.
Madam Chair, no.
Clerk will report the total.
4 yeas, 8 nays.
The amendment is not agreed to. Hearing no further discussion, the question is on the motion from the gentlewoman from Indiana. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no.
No.
In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The motion is agreed to.
Ask for a roll call.
Mr. McGovern requests a roll call. The clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Fishbach?
Yes.
Mrs. Fishbach, aye. Mr. Norman? Mr. Norman, aye. Mr. Roy? Mrs. Houchin? Mrs. Houchin, aye. Mr. Langworthy? Aye. Mr. Langworthy, aye. Mr. Scott? Aye. Mr. Scott, aye. Mr. Griffith? Aye. Mr. Griffith, aye. Mr. Jack?
Aye.
Mr. Jack, aye. Mr. McGovern?
Hell no.
Mr. McGovern, no. Ms. Scanlon?
No.
Ms. Scanlon, no. Mr. Neguse? No. Mr. Neguse, no. Ms. Ledger Fernandez? Ms. Ledger Fernandez, no. Madam Chair?
Aye.
Madam Chair, aye.
The clerk will report the total.
8 yeas, 4 nays.
The ayes have it. The motion to report is agreed to. Accordingly, the gentlewoman from Indiana, Ms. Houchin, will be managing this rule for the majority.
And I will for the minority. Can I ask just one question? What is the schedule?
We will be going to the floor
You gotta do it, right?
right now.
Are we doing just the rule tonight, or are we doing the rule and the bill tonight?
I am not clear, but I believe there's a chance we'll do the bill tonight.
All right.
Okay? So,
Aren't you glad we started at 1 o'clock?
without, usually about 20 minutes. 20, 30 minutes usually. Right. Without objection, the committee is adjourned.
Ability to establish or enforce state laws that help keep up with the technological evolutions of AI, as well as push back on deliberate designs that could harm Americans. Under this ban, state and local governments won't be able to enforce current, new, or updated regulations around AI use in the workplace, in procurement, guidelines, or in eliminating biases, even regulations that only impact their specific locality. As a former state legislator, I believe we can and should learn from the states and champion solutions that protect Americans, especially workers and children, from harmful AI systems and not put unnecessary stoppages on their progress. Regardless of where you are on AI policy, enacting this moratorium is bad practice. AI has shown tremendous potential to improve and enhance our lives, but if we do not take immediate action to address the threats it poses on consumers as they arise today, we will not be prepared to address the threats that could arise over the next 10 years as a result. I'd like to submit a letter for the record. This letter to Speaker Johnson was signed by over 100 organizations, such as Unidos US, the National Immigration Law Center, National Women's Law Center, and SEIU, in opposition to this provision that's tucked into this bill. In their letter to the Speaker, the organizations state that as we have seen during other periods of rapid technological advancement, like the Industrial Revolution, the creation of the automobile, protecting people from being harmed by new technologies, including holding companies accountable when they cause harm, will spur innovation and the adoption of new technologies. The Republican moratorium on AI will block new innovation from occurring. AI policy touches every aspect of American lives now, and most certainly will over in the next 10 years. Thank you for considering my amendment. I urge its adoption, and I look forward to answering any questions.
And what was the date on the letter?
May 19th, 2025.
And without objection, so ordered. All right, now recognize Mr. Goldman of New York.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm here to introduce two amendments, but I want to say just a couple things about the broader bill before I get to them. And most of what I'm about to say is really directed at blatantly false statements that many of my Republican colleagues have said, are saying, and likely will say about this bill. First, this bill slashes Medicaid, cuts Medicaid. More than 8 million Americans will lose their health care because of this bill. You can sugarcoat it all you want with eligibility and work requirements and any waste, fraud, and abuse, but the reality is that that's dressing up a pig, and it is cutting Medicaid. Second, the bill increases taxes for the poorest Americans and dramatically reduces taxes for the wealthiest. If you make less than $51,000 a year, your taxes will go up $700. If you make more than $4.3 million a year, which is the top 0.1% of Americans, your taxes will go down by nearly $400,000. That is reducing taxes for the wealthy and increasing taxes for the poor. Third, this bill repeals tax credits for American energy production that has resulted in hundreds of thousands of jobs created in this country and hundreds of billions of dollars of investment in American manufacturing. The vast majority of both of those are in red districts. These credits also reduce energy prices and increase our energy independence, two things that the America First gang endlessly talk about. And yet, this bill cuts all of that progress. And finally, you will hear my Republican colleagues say that cuts to essential government programs are needed to reduce an exploding deficit. That's nonsense. This bill increases the deficit by at least $3 trillion. So much so that Moody's became the last of the three major ratings agencies to downgrade U.S. debt. Now, this deficit increase will increase annual interest payments on our debt to 9% of total GDP in 10 years. 9%. That is just unsustainable. And yet it is the Republicans who are jamming this through. Now, my amendments address two separate things. One is a very simple amendment that I was shocked did not receive unanimous support in the Judiciary Committee, Amendment 258. It simply says that no federal funding can be used to deport American citizens. Remarkably, every Republican in the Judiciary Committee voted against it, and I hope this committee does not. My second amendment, Amendment 135, addresses what is truly a cruel and cynical attempt to make America hungry again. This bill does not trim SNAP around the edges. It does not cut waste, fraud, and abuse. It cuts SNAP to its core, to the tune of approximately $250 billion, which may sound like an abstract number, but there are human lives at stake. There are children who will go hungry. There are seniors who have to choose between prescription drugs and food. There are working parents who rely on that few $100s a month to put food on their table. My amendment would strike one of the most damaging provisions of this bill, a provision that would shift 75% of the administrative costs onto the states, up from current 50% split. In my district in New York City, more than 118,000 of my constituents use SNAP to put food on the table. And across New York State, 1 in 7 residents depend on it. This bill wouldn't just cut the benefits, it would starve the program. The GOP's proposed changes to SNAP would create a new burden on New York State of over $2.1 billion. And let's be real, what happens when administrative costs shoot up like that? The states can't backfill that amount of money. It's just not feasible. So what happens, of course, is benefits are cut. It's incredibly cynical because you will hear Republicans, and New York Republicans in particular, my colleagues, who have nearly as many SNAP beneficiaries as I do, and they will say, oh, well, it's just putting it on the local officials, on the state. But make no mistake, it increases administrative costs, which is just cutting benefits by another name. This program averages $6 per person per day. And the work requirements that we hear so much about would actually cause 300,000 New Yorkers to lose some or all of their SNAP benefits. That is what this bill is doing, and my amendment would fix that. I urge the committee to support it and rule it in order.
Gentleman yields back. Now recognize the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Moskowitz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My amendment today would prohibit the executive branch from using federal funds to eliminate FEMA, transfer its responsibilities to another agency, or reduce its staffing or funding in a way that impairs its ability to fulfill its statutory functions unless expressly authorized by Congress. In fact, my amendment today just says again what's in the Stafford Act and what's in the Homeland Security Act, which was passed after Katrina. The president was right that FEMA needs reform. Let me say this again. The president was right that FEMA needs reform, as the chairwoman knows from her experiences in North Carolina after Hurricane Helene. But the Secretary of Homeland Security is dead wrong that FEMA should be deleted. First of all, the Secretary is in violation right now of the Stafford Act and in violation of the Homeland Security Act. The Secretary has no ability to pause all grants, which she has done. She has no ability to transfer any of the appropriations or restructure FEMA as she's done. Both of those are in direct violation of the Stafford Act and the Homeland Security Act that was passed after Katrina. So grants are paused. What does that mean, that all grants are paused? That means states right now that are going into hurricane season don't know whether or not they're going to get a declaration, which this administration is holding back. What happens if you don't get a declaration? Just go ask the governor of Arkansas, Governor Huckabee, who worked for the president. It took her weeks to get a declaration. You can't move, you can't respond, you can't spend money because you don't know that you're going to get reimbursed. Fiscally constrained cities and counties don't make decisions. It's analysis paralysis. It's actually in direct contradiction with what we're trying to do. We're trying to speed up FEMA. We're trying to make it faster, right? Which is why I have a bill with Byron Donalds to get FEMA out of Homeland Security. Homeland is disabusing FEMA. They're using FEMA to do grants for the other 22 agencies. That's why we got to get FEMA away from Homeland Security. They're not paying vendors. You know what happens when we don't pay vendors? They can't pay subcontractors. They're not going to be ready to perform in hurricane season. They fired 30% or got them to retire of the workforce in FEMA. Most of the senior people with that experience. You've got regional offices in FEMA now that are half empty. By the way, remember that DOGE, remember the E at the end of DOGE, the word efficiency? Nothing at FEMA has been made more efficient. In fact, I would tell you that the Secretary of Homeland Security has turned FEMA into the Newark airport, okay? It is going to fail this summer. And so look, there's no doubt that FEMA needed reform, but what they've done at Homeland is they've taken something that needed help and they broke it further. Do you know what happens if there's no FEMA to the state that the Speaker represents or Steve Scalise represents? Louisiana goes bankrupt without FEMA when there's a hurricane that comes in from the Gulf of Mexico or the Gulf of America comes right into Louisiana, they're bankrupt. Alabama's bankrupt, Mississippi's bankrupt. You get an F5, F4 tornado in Tornado Alley, those states go bankrupt without FEMA. And yet, I don't see my Republican colleagues calling out the administration on how we're going to save FEMA and reform it. Let me say this. I think the Secretary of Homeland Security has exposed the president in significant ways. And I'm not in the business of protecting the president, but I am in the business of protecting the American people and the country. I don't think the president is aware of the current condition of FEMA and its potential inability to perform. We may get lucky, and hopefully we do. Hopefully we don't have a bad hurricane this season. Hopefully we don't have some unforeseen disaster like an earthquake that hasn't happened since the 90s. Lord knows we had a 1 in 100-year pandemic in the first term of the Trump administration. Hopefully we don't have anything like that, because they have decimated FEMA in ways that we won't know until it happens. And I know the chairwoman represents an area that didn't have the best experience after Helene. There's no question about that. There's dramatic improvement that needs to be done at FEMA. But I'm deeply concerned what's happened at Homeland, and I don't think the president is aware the current condition that the secretary has put him and the men and women that work there and the states that are going to go to FEMA and rely on them to help them in their time of need. And those resources are going to come slower. Think about it. You don't get to move your logistics. You don't get to move your water, your ice, your power generation, any of your stuff. And let me remind you, I did this for a living. For a Republican governor, I worked for Ron DeSantis for 2.5 years, took my political hat off. So I'm not giving you partisan coverage. I'm giving you the current state of affairs in an agency that has been absolutely destroyed. And with that, Madam Chairwoman, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Moskowitz. Ms. Morrison, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Ranking Member McGovern. My amendment today is simple. Before the House advances the largest Medicaid cut in program history, Congress needs to review how this bill will impact hospitals and Americans' access to services. My amendment simply says that the bill cannot take effect until an independent study confirms that these proposed Medicaid cuts will not result in hospital closures or reductions in service, including obstetric services. The Medicaid policies in this bill will strip healthcare coverage from millions of Americans and put essential labor and delivery services on the chopping block. Our country is already facing a worsening maternal health crisis and carelessly ripping away women's access to care without any consideration, and it's just plain cruel. We're already dead last in maternal mortality compared to our peer nations, and instead of putting forward a bill that will actually improve women's health and support moms and babies, my Republican colleagues have chosen to gut the program that covers more than 50% of births in many areas of Minnesota. Having cared for women and their babies for over 20 years as an OBGYN, I am appalled by how callously members of this chamber have turned their backs on their constituents. In my home state of Minnesota, 1.4 million Minnesotans get health care coverage through Medicaid, and millions more depend on the hospitals and providers who have been unequivocally clear that the Medicaid cuts in this bill will decimate their ability to provide care. Unequivocally clear that the cuts will force them to reduce services or shut down entirely. And the reality is, if hospitals are unable to keep their lights on and deliver care, we will all pay the price. People will not be able to access care. People will have more medical debt and they will be less healthy. People will suffer. People will die. I would encourage my Republican colleagues to believe the words of the hospitals that serve their constituents, the patients that live in their districts, and analysis after analysis that confirms that these cuts will cost millions of Americans their access to care. So my Republican colleagues who hold majority rule of this chamber, let's be very clear here. You can stop this right now. You can stop the hospital closures. You can stop the cuts to services. You can stop 14 million Americans from losing access to health insurance. You can stop the worsening of the maternal health care crisis and rural hospital crisis. You have the power. You can stop this. More than a dozen of our Republican colleagues here in the House have spoken out and said they cannot support deep cuts to Medicaid. Other Republicans have called these massive cuts morally wrong. And more than a dozen state legislators from my home state of Minnesota wrote our Republican delegation and the president making a very clear case about how this would be a disaster and begged them not to go through with these cuts. I have a copy with me here, Madam Chair, and I request consent for this letter to be entered into the record.
Without objection.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'd like to highlight just a couple of their points. The Minnesota Republican legislators wrote, and I quote, "Too deep of a cut is unmanageable in any instance. Massive Medicaid reductions could punish Minnesota for being such a strong leader in greater efficiencies and better outcomes. Drastic reductions to Medicaid funding have the potential to impact the 1.4 million people we serve and place incredible pressure on our overall state budget." And they closed with, "Please remind our good leaders in Washington that simply cutting the budget is not going to take away our responsibilities to the aged, those with disabilities, mental health needs, children, and the poor," end quote. So to my Republican colleagues, please hear the pleas of your state counterparts as you consider this bill today. I also have with me here a letter from Minnesota's nonprofit hospitals, and Madam Chair, I would request consent for this letter to be entered into the record.
Without objection.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'd like to highlight just a couple of their points. They wrote, and I quote, "Any reduction in federal support would trigger immediate consequences. Patients will lose access, hospitals will be forced to reduce services and will face impossible choices. And communities across our state will feel the effects whether they are covered by Medicaid or not. We know these are difficult budget discussions, but cutting Medicaid doesn't erase the need for care. It simply shifts the burden to states, to hospitals, and ultimately to the very people the program is meant to protect," end quote. Their pleas are clear. Their threats are real. The facts are undeniable. So please, on behalf of all Americans, I implore you to do the right thing. Rule this amendment in order and stop these cuts. I yield, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Fishbach, do you have any questions? Mr. McGovern?
Again, I want to thank all of you for your patience and for being here. And you remind all of us of the fact that the underlying bill, the reconciliation bill, is a lousy piece of legislation. I mean, the attacks on health care, attacks on food assistance, the attacks on public lands, the attacks on FEMA, the attacks, and the indifference on AI, which is a very dangerous thing that we're about to do. I mean, basically saying we're not going to do our job in the Congress, but we're going to prevent states from doing anything to protect the citizens. I mean, just so many things. I mean, this bill should not be coming to the floor. Your amendments are all good, and we're going to, make the case that they should be made in order when we get to the point of actually reporting out a rule. But again, I think it is so important that you stayed here and that you made the case as to how we could improve the bill. Did you have? Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to add something that I know is near and dear to your heart because you're such a leader on food insecurity and it's done such incredible work. These so-called work requirements are such a fig leaf. They're such a pretext when in reality, the census data shows that 82% of households with working age adults who do not live with minor children and did not receive disability benefits had earnings during the year 2023. Right, yeah. This is not an issue that needs to be addressed. It is an issue that is being created so that poor Americans can struggle even more.
Again, we had this discussion in the Ag Committee. I mean, of a single mother with a 7-year-old child, who loses her job, and she has 90 days to get another job. Otherwise, she loses her benefit. And the back and forth in the Ag Committee was like, well, the 7 years old, the child at school. I mean, like, do people realize what time school gets out? I mean, if people are working, I mean, what happens during the summer? What happens during vacations? I mean, again, many people are able to juggle all this stuff. And the majority of people who are able-bodied, who are on SNAP, actually do work. And there are work requirements, especially for those who are able-bodied adults without dependents. But to be totally indifferent to what life is like for a single parent with a 7 or 8 or 9-year-old child, and to just say, oh, one glove fits all, it's just a cruel and rotten thing to do. And we're talking about food assistance and a really, meager food benefit. On average, $2 per person per meal. And by the way, with the state cost share, that requirement now, many states won't be able to meet that cost share, and so that $2 benefit will get even less. I mean, you can't buy a cup of coffee in the Capitol for $2. And it's like this is where you're going to try to get money to offset tax cuts for billionaires? Like, who does this? I mean, who thought this brilliant idea up? I mean, it's just such a terrible thing to do. I mean, there are other things we can do to improve programs. Every program can be improved. But this is not it. And I appreciate your amendment. I appreciate all your amendments and look forward to working with you. I yield back.
Thank you. I just, again, wanted to, we'll just wave at this point. I want to thank you all for your amendments and for sticking around so long. Representative Lofgren, I really appreciated your bringing attention to the fact that when cuts are made to scientific research, medical research, it doesn't just harm that research. And of course, we've heard about ovarian cancer trials being paused, people not being able to get treatment that they were hoping would impact their issues. But we then know there's job loss when that happens. We're hearing from universities in my district that students who thought they had internships, which would make them the researchers of tomorrow, are losing those internships. And then we're hearing from contractors and tradespeople that universities, in order to try to preserve some of the research, are diverting funding from capital projects. And then we have contractors losing those jobs and tradespeople being laid off because those things are happening. And Rep. Houlihan, we have so many veterans in southeastern Pennsylvania. I think you and I, we each have about 28,000 veterans in our districts. You've got the Coatesville facility in your district. The Philadelphia VA is adjacent to my district. And of course, we've just tried to expand the benefits available to our veterans through the PACT Act. And at the same time that we're trying to expand those benefits and make sure that people actually get the treatment that they are entitled to, that they've earned through their service, we're seeing these funding cuts and the pulling back. So thank you for amendments bringing attention to all of that and everything that people have put forward. Excuse me, losing my voice. I yield back.
Could I just address the science issue briefly? Because we've seen reductions in physics, in mathematics, in chemistry, in computer science, and what we've seen all across the United States is universities reducing the number of doctoral students that they are admitting because they cannot see how to pay for the research. So what's happening? Europe, Canada, and yes, China are recruiting the scientists that we are losing. So we are going to pay a big economic price for a long time for what's already happened. So let's stop the digging and try and recover, because this is going to hit our economy in a way that is really terrible, terrible impact. And I thank you for
well, and you do bring up another point, which is that these foreign students coming to the U.S., when we are making them feel unwelcome, they often pay full freight.
Correct.
Which is really, really helpful to our universities, and all of a sudden that's an income source that
well,
they
the
don't
number
have.
of F1 student applications has completely crashed.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we're losing money because they subsidize the American students. And then we're also losing, almost 50% of the Nobel Prize winners who are Americans in the sciences were Americans by choice, Americans born someplace else. Those people are not going to be here in our future.
So it's a talent drain and a financial drain. Thank you. I yield back.
Thanks, Ms. Scanlon. Do my colleagues on my side have any questions? Okay. Well, thank you all very much. Seeing no one else having questions, the panel is excused. Thank you very much for coming. If the next panel, we could do, I hope you did this, start down here and move up. Ms. Ansari, Ms. Johnson, Ms. Hayes, Mr. Kassar, Ms. Williams, Mr. Cisneros, Mr. Kurson, and Mr. Takano. Doesn't really matter which seat you sit in. I'll call you by the way you were on this list. Yeah, mark them. No, Ms. Hayes. I know Kassar. Ms. Ansari, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairwoman Fox and Ranking Member McGovern, for allowing me the opportunity to join today's hearing. First, let me start by saying that the fact that we have been here since the literal middle of the night at a committee markup that will determine the federal government's budget, something that affects every single American, is absurd. But I'm proud of the showing of Democrats in this room, of colleagues who have been here for decades, alongside some colleagues who, like me, have been here for just a couple of months. We hail from different parts of the country, different backgrounds, different ideas on policy, but we stand united against this bill and the process by which it is moving through this committee. I urge you to support my amendment that would strike the text of the bill and replace it with the Stock Act 2.0. This would prevent government officials and their immediate family members from being able to trade individual stocks. The original Stock Act barred members of Congress, the President, Vice President, and high-level staff from engaging in insider trading or otherwise using non-public information for their own benefit. It also included important updates to financial transparency by requiring these high-ranking government officials to disclose financial transactions to the public. It is because of this latter provision that we discovered earlier this month that the chairman of the committee with jurisdiction over oil and gas, as well as mining lease sales, bought up to $150,000 in stock throughout the month of March. Those stocks included shares of oil companies like ExxonMobil, Chevron, BP, ConocoPhillips, Suncor, and Canadian Natural Resources. They also included mining companies like BHP, Freeport-McMoRan, and Rio Tinto, for whom the largest shareholder is a Chinese state-owned corporation. These oil and mining stock trades took place while the chairman was writing a major portion of this very bill, the portion that is an unprecedented multi-billion-dollar giveaway to oil and mining companies. Now, so many of these CEOs are set to directly benefit from this partisan budget that makes draconian cuts to the programs on which my constituents and my Republican colleagues' constituents rely on. This is bigger than any one member benefiting from a stock trade. It's about this legislation as a whole, a budget that endorses this kind of behavior, uplifts it, and makes it into real policy that benefits the ultra-rich getting richer over everything else. Let's be clear, this so-called big, beautiful bill is not in the interest of the American people. It includes billions of dollars in cuts from critical programs such as SNAP and Medicaid. Over 7.6 million Americans would lose their health insurance just from these cuts. And that doesn't include the millions of Americans that would lose access to health care when hospitals that rely on Medicaid are forced to shut down, all while giving trillions of dollars in handouts to mega corporations and the ultra-wealthy. And now we also know that at least one member of Congress could personally and directly enrich himself from these provisions. This is corruption, plain and simple. My amendment would strike the text of this bill and replace it with legislation that would prevent this sort of corruption from public officials. This is not a partisan issue, it is common sense. Members of Congress should not be able to use their positions of power for personal financial gain, nor should there be a perception of such. We should not have to rely on the self-restraint of members of Congress to resist the temptation of self-dealing and insider trading. It just should not be allowed. Even Speaker Mike Johnson voiced his support for banning stock trading for members of Congress last week, stating that members of Congress should not, quote, have any appearance of impropriety, end quote. The oil and mining stock trade that happened while the chair was writing this bill to give away unprecedented sums to oil and mining industries most certainly has the appearance of impropriety. I sincerely hope that it is just an appearance. At a time when public trust in Congress is abysmal, we have to work harder to rebuild it. Banning stock trades by members of Congress is the first step. It's the lowest hanging fruit. There is absolutely no reason why Republicans on this committee should oppose this amendment. I urge the committee to make my amendments in order. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Madam Chairman, Ranking Member McGovern. There's so much to talk about in this bill, and I have several amendments, and I want to highlight two of them. But before I do that, I wanted to make some general comments on behalf of the residents of Texas 32 and the great state of Texas. You know, our deficit is at catastrophic levels. We've had multiple committee hearings in this building that suggest we're going to be facing some very impending financial crisis. Our federal credit rating was just reduced. And this bill and the Republicans in this building are voting to add $4 trillion to the deficit in the most irresponsible way possible, on the backs of hungry children, on the backs of young mothers and families and the poor in this country to keep them from getting health care, on the backs of children and kids who want to get an education in cybersecurity, on the backs of safety of our aviation and our airports, on the backs of FEMA and states for disaster preparedness, on the backs of law enforcement officers who are being routinely terminated, on the backs of woeful areas of across this government for lack of prudent and proper investment to the health and safety and the prosperity of this country. And we're being put in a dire financial strait so that the President of the United States can reward a few of his friends with extra money in their bank account that they don't need, that they can't spend. And the Republicans in this Congress have abdicated all the values that they have campaigned on for decades in homage to this one man. And it is a travesty to this government and to the American people that this is happening. Democrats have been protesting this viciously all through the day in the weeks preceding this to have the American people wake up and say, this is harming you. This bill will hurt the American people. I have an amendment for the Affordable Care Act tax credit. Millions of people get their health care in this country because of the Affordable Care Act. Texas is one of the leading states of it. Our state and our health care system is going to be devastated. And this is a bill that is supposed to give tax cuts. But yet we are removing one of the most critical tax cuts that the American people rely on. It makes absolutely no sense. How can we tout the greatest tax cut bill to the American people at the same time we are cutting one of the most important tax cuts that benefits the vast majority of the American people? And I really would like to urge this committee to restore the tax cuts of the Affordable Care Act. Millions and millions of people in the state of Texas and across this land desperately rely on that to get the desperate needs of healthcare. Small businesses, our new entrepreneurs, the young people who don't work for big corporations with vast amounts of employees to have diversity of risk. They rely on the Affordable Care Act. And health insurance is already one of the leading expenses of a family in this country, and it is prohibitively expensive. And this initiative, the Affordable Care Act, and these tax credits make it possible. The other amendment I would like to address for this committee is to restore funding to FEMA. I sit on the Homeland Security Committee. I've heard so much testimony about the urgent need and the critical role that FEMA plays as the backstop for states and American families when nature and the disaster strike out of the blue without ability to prepare. It's the safety net that is so critically relied on by so many. Our country will be at an peril on our national security, on our preparedness, if we don't have FEMA to come in and put the pieces back together. To just today, horrible tornadoes ripped through Alabama. I mean, no state is free from natural disaster. And Texas is certainly one of the states that has had to rely on FEMA the most. Hurricane Harvey decimated our Gulf Coast. Tornadoes decimate North Texas. We're the 6th largest economy in the world, the state of Texas. And without FEMA, we will be so burdened in putting our country back together that the federal government will also be harmed. I appreciate the consideration for this committee, and I strongly encourage you to adopt my amendments and make them in order. And with that, I yield back. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Ms. Hayes, you're recognized.
Thank you. Hungry kids don't learn. This issue has always been important to me. Unless and until you've come into your classroom on a Monday morning and seen a kid with their head down, knowing that they haven't had a decent meal since they left, you can't understand. Unless and until you find yourself automatically packing a second piece of fruit in your lunch because you expect that one of your students is going to ask you for it, you can't understand. It changes you. It does something to you. When I came to Congress, I knew I would work to help address food insecurity. But my Republican colleagues here in this bill seek to exacerbate it. Hunger is a policy choice, and today we're considering legislation that makes the choice to take food away from people, from children. The reconciliation bill we are considering here today is the largest ever cut to the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. Approximately $313 billion will be taken away from the most vulnerable in our country: hungry children, families, veterans, and seniors. Republicans are pushing a legislative package that guts SNAP, the most efficient and effective anti-poverty program in this nation. The cost-sharing provisions in this legislation are going to shift the financial burden to states, forcing the states to cut benefits, eligibility, or both in order to reduce costs. States have always been responsible for hiring staff and administering the benefits they receive through the federal government and paying an equal share with the federal government. Under this bill, a workforce already facing shortages would have more responsibility to address paperwork errors with fewer funds. This bill does nothing to support workforce development or the administrative support that will come as a result of these changes. In my state of Connecticut, the Department of Social Services estimates that this would cost an additional $177 million per year. But based on the FY23 error rates, the state of New York, which would be forced to pay $1.8 billion, Texas, $1.074 billion, Georgia, $82 million, and North Carolina, $584 million in additional costs to administer these programs. Additionally, this legislation would